My name is Jin Park, and until the morning I accidentally unbroke a microwave with my bare hand, my greatest talent was finding expensive things at prices that made normal people suspicious. I did not steal them. That was important. I simply had the spiritual gift of appearing wherever rich people made financially irresponsible decisions. Storage auctions, junkyards, abandoned warehouses, insurance lots, estate sales, flea markets, police auctions, failed restaurants, bankrupt tech offices. If something had once been expensive and was now covered in dust, coffee stains, mysterious dents, or legal paperwork, I wanted to look at it. Unfortunately, wanting to look at expensive trash and being able to profit from expensive trash were two different things. At 24 years old, I lived in a studio apartment so small that my bed could touch the refrigerator if I kicked hard enough. My bank account had $48. My credit card company sent me emails with threatening punctuation, and the landlord had started calling me young man in a tone that meant rent was no longer a friendly suggestion. Then my microwave exploded. Not dramatically. It did not launch through a wall or open a portal to another dimension. It just made a sad buzzing noise, flashed blue, and died while trying to heat a cup of instant noodles. I stared at it. The microwave had been my loyal companion for 3 years. It had cooked noodles, reheated fried chicken, dried wet socks during an emergency I would rather not discuss, and once defeated a cockroach through indirect thermal warfare. I slapped the side. Nothing happened. I slapped it again. That was when the world froze for half a second. Not literally. I could still hear the upstairs neighbor dropping something heavy, but my vision filled with strange, transparent after-images. The microwave flickered between states. Dead microwave, cracked microwave, dirty microwave, clean microwave, new microwave, boxed microwave. For one ridiculous moment, I could see every version of that object layered over itself like someone had stacked the last 3 years of its life into a single second. Then I felt something beneath my palm, a kind of invisible dial. I had no better way to explain it. It was like touching the handle of time itself. Instinctively, I turned it backward. The microwave changed. The burn mark vanished. The scratched plastic became smooth. A dent popped outward with a soft thunk. The faded buttons turned dark and fresh. Grease disappeared from the vents. And then, with a final little chirp, the display lit up. I slowly removed my hand. The microwave looked brand new. Not cleaned, not repaired. Brand new. I opened the door. The inside smelled like factory plastic. My cup of noodles was gone. That was bad. Then I realized the cup had not been inside the microwave when I touched the outer shell. Apparently, whatever this ability was, it only affected the exact non-living object I touched, not everything nearby. I stared at my hands. Then I stared at the microwave. Then I stared at a cracked phone sitting on my table. I had found it 2 days earlier behind a bus stop. The screen looked like someone had used it as a hockey puck. I touched it. The same sensation came back. The phone became layers, shattered, scratched, used, new, boxed. Before assembly. I quickly stopped before I went too far. That part mattered, because when I turned the invisible dial too far backward, the phone did not become newer. It became less complete. For a terrifying second, I saw screws vanish and glass separate from metal as the object moved backward toward the factory process. I pushed forward slightly. Everything snapped back together. The screen became flawless. The battery health returned to perfect. The factory sticker reappeared. I almost dropped it. Then I screamed so loudly that my neighbor hit the wall. I spent the next 6 hours touching everything in my apartment. A scratched frying pan became fresh from the store. A stained white shirt became so new the tag came back, which raised several questions about whether I now owed taxes. A broken chair repaired itself. A half-used pencil became full-length again. A crumpled $5 bill became crisp, but the serial number stayed the same, which was probably good because I was not trying to accidentally create counterfeit money before lunch. Food did not work. Plants did not work. My own body definitely did not work, which I confirmed by touching a bruise for 10 embarrassing minutes. Only non-living objects, and not just repairing them. I could move them backward through their actual physical history. That difference was enormous. A broken object could return to before it broke. A burned object could return to before the fire. A rusty object could return to before rust. A repainted object could return to the original paint. A forged signature could vanish from a document if I reversed the paper to before it was written on. The object remembered. Every dent, every scratch, every repair, every coat of paint, every stage of assembly, every moment. And somehow, by touching it, I could choose which version came back. I did what any responsible adult would do with a reality-breaking power. I went directly to the junkyard. My friend Minho ran a salvage lot on the edge of the city. Calling Minho my friend was generous. We had met because I once tried to buy a broken vending machine from him for $30, and he refused because he said I looked like the kind of person who would die inside it. But he liked money, I liked garbage, and eventually that became friendship. When I arrived, he was standing beside a wrecked luxury sedan drinking canned coffee. The front half of the car looked like it had tried to headbutt a mountain. Minho waved. I pointed at the car. How much? He looked at me, then at the car. Why? Art project. He stared. I stared back. He took another sip. 500. I nearly fainted. The badge on the twisted hood was a Ferrari. Not an old Ferrari, a recent one, or at least what remained of one. Apparently it had been involved in an accident, declared a total loss, stripped of a few valuable parts, then sold at an insurance auction where nobody wanted to deal with the frame damage. Minho had bought it as part of a lot. He expected to cut it up and sell pieces. To me it looked like a giant red lottery ticket. I had $48, so naturally I negotiated. By negotiated I mean I gave Minho my old laptop, my gaming chair, a vintage camera I had been pretending would increase in value, $40 cash, and a signed written promise that if I became rich from the car, I would buy him dinner. Minho accepted mostly because he wanted to see how stupid this became. He towed the Ferrari into an empty corner of the yard. The front was crushed. 2 wheels were bent. Every airbag had deployed. The windshield was cracked. 1 door was missing. The engine looked like it had been attacked by angry construction equipment. Minho folded his arms. There, your art. I walked around the wreck, trying not to grin. The ability had worked on a phone. A car was much bigger. I had no idea if size mattered. I placed my hand on the rear quarter panel. The world changed. The physical history of the Ferrari exploded through my senses. I saw the crash in reverse, metal unfolding, glass flying back into place, airbags collapsing into steering wheel compartments, oil climbing from pavement into the engine. The car rolled backward through rain, road dust, tire wear, fuel consumption, service appointments, parking garages, shipping containers, and finally a spotless showroom. I could go farther. Back to the factory, back to unassembled components, back to individual parts. I stopped at showroom condition. Then I pulled. The Ferrari shuddered. Minho dropped his coffee. The missing door flew across the yard. I did not summon it. The door had been leaning against a fence 20 meters away. Since it was originally part of the Ferrari at the time I selected, apparently the ability considered it part of the same object. The door shot through the air like it had received urgent instructions from the universe and slammed perfectly into place. Minho screamed. The hood unfolded. Glass cracks zipped shut. Paint peeled backward into smooth red perfection. The bent wheels straightened. The tires thickened as worn rubber returned. Broken headlights healed. The engine reassembled itself with a rapid series of metallic clicks. Tiny screws literally jumped from a bucket nearby and vanished into the body. One side mirror flew out of Minho's office window because he had apparently been using it as a paperweight. When the restoration finished, the Ferrari sat under the junkyard lights looking so flawless that the piles of crushed cars around it suddenly seemed embarrassed. I removed my hand. The engine started. Not because I pressed anything. It simply returned to the exact showroom state I had selected, and apparently that moment included a charged battery and a tiny amount of fuel. Minho slowly crouched. He picked up his fallen coffee can. He looked at the Ferrari. Then he looked at me. Jin, yes, your art project is haunted. I could have told him the truth. Instead, I said I had been secretly studying advanced restoration techniques. He looked at the perfectly repaired Ferrari, then at the side mirror-shaped hole in his office window, then back at me. He did not believe me, but Minho had one beautiful quality. He did not ask too many questions when money was nearby. The problem was paperwork. A totaled supercar could not simply return to the road because it became pretty again. It still had an insurance history. It still had records. It still had a salvage title. That was my first important lesson. My power could rewind objects. It could not rewind databases. At least not unless the database was stored on a physical object I could touch, and I was definitely not going to break into an insurance company's server room on day one. So instead of trying to pretend the Ferrari had never crashed, I sold it honestly as an extraordinary restoration. A specialist inspected it. Then he inspected it again. Then he called another specialist. Then they argued for 40 minutes because none of the measurements made sense. The frame was perfect, not repaired, perfect. Factory welds, factory paint thickness, original parts, original glass, no microscopic stress, no signs of bodywork. Even the engine had less wear than the mileage suggested. The buyer was a collector named Mr. Kwan who arrived expecting a scam. He left looking like he had witnessed a religious event. He paid me $260,000. After fees, transport, paperwork, and Minhyo demanding that the promised dinner include actual steak, I had more money than I had ever seen. I transferred my share. My banking app displayed the number. I refreshed it 6 times. Then I touched my phone carefully because for the first time in my life I did not want the number to go backward. That should have been enough. Any normal person would have stopped, invested, bought an apartment, paid taxes, maybe taken a vacation. I bought 11 broken cars before sunset. Minhyo found them for me: flood-damaged Porsche, burned Lamborghini, rolled Bentley, Maserati with a tree through the roof, Mercedes that had apparently fallen into a swimming pool, a nearly new Aston Martin with the front missing, and, for reasons nobody could explain, a Rolls-Royce that smelled strongly of seafood and contained 300 decorative seashells. I restored them one by one. The flood damage reversed. Water seeped out of carpets, rose into droplets, and flew backward through open doors like gravity had become confused. The burned Lamborghini turned from a black shell into a bright yellow monster in 7 seconds. The tree in the Maserati did not reverse because it was a separate object, so when I restored the car, the roof tried to occupy the same space as the trunk. That taught me my second important lesson. Remove foreign objects first. We needed a crane. Minhyo laughed for 20 minutes. The Rolls-Royce was worse. When I touched it, I discovered its history was normal until 6 months earlier, when some rich man had apparently decided the interior needed a coastal theme. I rewound past the seashell installation. 300 shells launched out of the cabin at once. Minhyo and I hit the ground while decorative sea life blasted across the warehouse like luxury shotgun ammunition. 1 shell landed in his coffee. After that, he wore safety goggles during restorations. Within 3 weeks, our operation became a machine. Minhyo sourced damaged luxury cars. I restored them. We sold them through legitimate dealers and specialty auctions. We never claimed they had no history. We simply provided inspection reports showing impossible quality. That made buyers want them more. Rumors spread. There was a mysterious restoration shop capable of bringing wrecks back with no replacement panels. Collectors started calling. Dealers started bidding. Insurance adjusters started developing headaches. I rented a larger warehouse and officially founded Second Chance Restoration. The name sounded respectable. Our internal slogan was, "Please remove all trees before touching." By the end of the first month, I had made my first million. By the end of the second month, I accidentally restored a $1 million watch into a block of raw gold. That was my third lesson. Small objects had extremely deep histories. The watch belonged to a celebrity businessman named Victor Han. He arrived at our warehouse wearing sunglasses indoors and followed by 4 assistants carrying nothing. The watch had been crushed when his custom-armored golf cart rolled over it. Victor wanted us to repair it because he had heard our work was physically disrespectful to the concept of damage. I liked that description. The watch was a rare, complicated piece with hundreds of tiny moving components. I touched it. My mind flooded with stages: crushed, used, new, assembled, machined, parts, raw materials. I tried to stop at new. I slipped. The watch collapsed. Not broke, collapsed backward. Gears separated, screws unscrewed, hands detached. The case changed shape. The sapphire glass became an unfinished crystal blank. Gold components merged into earlier forms. For half a second, the entire object turned into a strange pile of manufacturing ingredients arranged on the velvet table. Victor's assistants gasped. Minhyo whispered, "Advanced restoration?" I pushed the history forward as fast as I could. The parts flew together. Gears assembled. The movement stacked itself. Hands returned. The watch became complete. Then new. I stopped. Nobody moved. Victor picked it up. His face slowly changed. "You made it younger." I said nothing. He stared at me. "You did not repair it." I still said nothing. He leaned closer. "You made it younger." Minhyo suddenly clapped his hands and announced that our proprietary methods were protected by multiple imaginary international patents. Victor did not care. He paid triple the quoted price. Then he left. The next day, a truck arrived containing 17 broken watches. The day after that, he sent a cracked grand piano, then a damaged racing bicycle, then a wine cooler that had stopped cooling, then a gold-plated espresso machine, then an actual chandelier. Apparently once billionaires discovered a man who could restore anything, they forgot categories existed. That was how I realized cars were only the beginning, so I went shopping for disasters. I bought cracked designer handbags, snapped guitars, broken cameras, ruined furniture, flooded electronics, scratched jewelry, storm-damaged sculptures, and a vending machine that had been thrown from a third-floor window. That last one was personal. Minhyo had once refused to sell me a vending machine because he thought I would die inside it. Now I bought one, restored it, and placed it in his office. He stared at it. I handed him a coin. He bought a coffee. The machine ate the coin. I touched it and rewound only far enough to return the coin. The coffee disappeared from his hand and shot backward into the machine. We learned another lesson. Never rewind an object while somebody is actively using its output, especially coffee. For a while, life became unbelievably fun. I would wake up, eat breakfast, and go make money by slapping expensive garbage. Every day brought something more ridiculous. A hotel paid me to restore a marble fountain after a delivery truck drove through it. A fashion company brought me a limited edition jacket that had been shredded by a celebrity's pet tiger. A museum consultant asked whether I could clean an antique silver tray. I touched it and accidentally removed 200 years of tarnish, fingerprints, repairs, and one hidden inscription nobody knew existed. Then came the painting. It was delivered in a black case by an elderly art dealer named Madame Seo. She wore gloves, spoke softly, and looked at our warehouse with the expression of someone who had expected a laboratory and found two men eating spicy rice cakes beside a restored Lamborghini. Inside the case was a burned canvas. Most of the surface was black. Only one corner still showed color. Madame Seo explained that the painting had belonged to a private collection. There had been a mansion fire decades earlier. The owner believed the painting was destroyed, but the remains had survived in storage. It was potentially the lost work of a famous modern painter. Potentially. That word was doing a lot of work. Experts could not authenticate it because too much was gone. She wanted us to stabilize the frame. I wanted to see what the canvas remembered. I touched the wooden stretcher first. History appeared. Fire, smoke, gallery, storage, studio, raw wood, easy. Then I touched the canvas. My breath stopped. The object had a longer, richer history than anything I had touched. Layers of soot reversed through my mind. Black paint, colored paint, sketch lines, blank canvas. But there were also later changes. At some point, someone had painted over part of the original. At another point, the signature had been touched up. The fire came much later. I realized something incredible. I did not have to restore the painting to new. I could restore it to any exact physical state it had ever possessed. So I searched backward through its history like flipping through invisible photographs. Burned, before fire, before restoration, before overpainting, original finished work. I stopped there, then I pulled. The warehouse filled with the smell of smoke. Not new smoke, old smoke leaving. Black soot rose from the canvas and gathered into curling clouds before vanishing as the physical history reversed. Charred fibers straightened, blisters flattened, pigment returned. The burned frame became polished wood. Darkness retreated across the image. A woman appeared first, then a blue chair, then a window, then a strange red bird painted above a city. The colors became so bright it felt like someone had turned on another sun. Finally, a signature emerged in the bottom corner. Madame Seo made a tiny sound. Minhyo slowly lowered his rice cake. The painting stood there complete, not repaired, not recreated. Exactly as it had been when the artist finished it. Madame Seo stepped closer. Her eyes filled with tears. Then she whispered the estimated value. Minhyo inhaled a rice cake. We spent the next 3 minutes preventing him from dying. The painting was worth somewhere between $12 and $20 million. Maybe more because the original condition was impossible. Madame Seo did not ask how I had done it. I think some people become so wealthy and experienced that when reality breaks in front of them, they simply add a new category to their contact list. She paid our fee. Then she asked whether I handled sculpture. I said yes. I had never handled sculpture. That answer changed everything. Within 2 months, Second Chance Restorations stopped being a weird car business and became the most secretive luxury repair company in the country. We did not advertise. We did not need to. Billionaires whispered. Collectors called. Celebrities sent assistants. Royal families sent lawyers who sent other lawyers. Our appointment calendar became more valuable than some small companies. And still, I bought wrecked cars for fun. Because nothing compared to watching a car that looked like modern art suddenly remember it was a Ferrari. That was how I met the man who nearly ruined my business with a fake Bugatti. His name was Dae-ho Lim. He ran a luxury dealership called Crown Velocity. Daeho had perfect hair, perfect teeth, and the smile of someone who considered honesty a hobby for poorer people. He arrived at my warehouse with a flatbed truck carrying a destroyed Bugatti Chiron. At least, that was what he said. The car had supposedly burned in a private garage. Only part of the chassis remained. The body was mostly gone. The engine looked melted. Daeho claimed he had acquired it legally and wanted full restoration. He offered me $1 million if I could do it. Minhyo's eyes turned into imaginary currency symbols. I did not touch the car immediately. By then I had learned to inspect first: serial numbers, paperwork, ownership, photographs. Daeho had documents, too many documents. People who were telling the truth usually brought a folder. Daeho brought 3 binders and a lawyer. That made me suspicious. So while everyone discussed the contract, I walked around the wreck and casually placed 2 fingers on the frame. History opened. Fire, workshop, cutting torch, warehouse, assembly, but not Bugatti assembly. The frame had never been inside a Bugatti factory. The engine had never belonged to the frame. The carbon pieces came from different cars. The burned shell was a Frankenstein made from cheap wreck parts. Someone had intentionally assembled a fake destroyed Bugatti because a destroyed exotic car was difficult to verify. Daeho expected me to restore it, but my ability could only return an object to states it had actually possessed. If I tried to restore this thing to showroom condition, it would not become a Bugatti. It would become the ugly collection of unrelated parts it had been before the scammer welded them together. I almost laughed. Then I got an idea. A terrible idea, which meant Minhyo loved it immediately. I told Daeho I could do the restoration, but he had to watch from behind the safety line. He agreed. His lawyer agreed. His cameraman agreed. Of course he had brought a cameraman. Daeho wanted footage of our famous technique. I placed my palm on the fake car. Then I reversed it, not to before the fire. Farther, the melted appearance vanished. Then the welded structure began disassembling. Bolts spun out, panels detached. A cut section of chassis separated. The engine dropped onto a rolling stand because we had wisely placed one beneath it. Random carbon fiber fragments peeled away. A wheel rolled across the floor. A dashboard from a completely different model fell out. Finally, the supposed Bugatti sat in 8 separate piles. One pile was from a McLaren, one from an Audi, one from a replica kit car, one was apparently industrial scrap, and one small piece had originally been part of a restaurant oven. Nobody spoke. Then Minhyo pointed at the oven part. I knew it. He had not known it. Daeho's face turned pale. I looked at his cameraman. You got that? The cameraman nodded. Daeho immediately started shouting about proprietary methods, breach of contract, confidentiality, defamation, and several other legal words that became less powerful every time Minhyo pointed at the restaurant oven. Daeho had been planning to use our reputation to create a supposedly legitimate restored Bugatti, then sell it overseas for millions. Instead, his own recording showed the fake disassembling itself into evidence. He lost his dealership. We gained more clients. And I gained a dangerous new thought. If I could reverse scams, what else could I reverse? Not events, objects, but objects were witnesses. A stolen antique could show when it had been repainted. A forged sculpture could show when the fake signature was carved. A swapped gemstone could show whether it had ever been mounted in the claimed crown. A luxury bag could reveal whether it came from a factory or somebody's basement. I had accidentally become the world's most terrifying authentication expert. That would have been profitable enough. Then Minhyo showed me the supercar graveyard. It was in another country, hidden outside a desert city. Hundreds of damaged luxury vehicles sat behind a high fence under the sun. Flood cars, fire cars, crash cars, abandoned cars, prototype cars, impounded cars. Cars owned by people who had vanished after cryptocurrency companies collapsed. Some were worth nothing in their current state. Some were too damaged to identify. Minhyo had found the lot through a salvage broker. He turned his tablet toward me. On the screen was a photograph of a row of destroyed supercars stretching into the distance. Lamborghinis, Ferraris, McLarens, Porsches, Bentleys, cars I could not even name. At the center, under a dusty tarp, was the unmistakable shape of something extremely rare. The lot would be auctioned in bulk. The opening price was laughably low compared with the original value. Still far more money than we had casually spent before. Minhyo looked at me. I looked at the screen, then at my hand, then back at the screen. I should have remembered all the lessons. Paperwork, ownership, foreign objects, hidden history. The universe had spent months teaching me that every expensive wreck came with problems. Instead, I smiled, because apparently becoming a millionaire had not made me smarter. It had only given my bad ideas a larger budget. 3 days later, Minhyo and I were standing in a desert wearing sunglasses, staring through a chain-link fence at what looked like the afterlife for billionaires. The supercar graveyard was bigger than the photos, much bigger. Rows of wrecked luxury cars stretched across a fenced compound under white sunlight. Some were covered in sand, some were stacked too high. One Lamborghini had no wheels and was resting on 4 office chairs, which felt disrespectful on a spiritual level. The auction manager, a cheerful man named Omar, drove us through the yard in a golf cart. Every 10 seconds I saw something that made my brain calculate imaginary profit. A Ferrari with its roof crushed, a McLaren missing its rear half, a Rolls-Royce with every window broken, a Porsche that had clearly spent time underwater, a Mercedes with 3 bullet holes and a child's inflatable flamingo stuck in the grill. Omar noticed me staring. "Long story," he said. I decided I did not want the story. The bulk lot contained 162 vehicles. Most had paperwork problems, severe structural damage, incomplete parts, or simply cost too much to repair conventionally. The estimated original combined value was more than $40 million. The auction reserve was $800,000. That sounded insane until Omar explained that removing, sorting, transporting, storing, inspecting, and legally processing 162 ruined luxury vehicles was a nightmare. Normal buyers wanted the best 10 cars. The seller wanted someone to take everything. That included burned shells, stripped frames, wrecked sedans, and one enormous luxury SUV that had somehow been filled with hardened concrete. I stared at the concrete SUV. Omar smiled. Longer story. Again, I chose peace. Then he showed us the car under the tarp. He removed the cover. Minhyo stopped breathing. I nearly walked into a bollard. It was a Pagani, or most of one. The front was intact. The rear had been destroyed by fire. The interior was sun-damaged. One wheel was missing. Even as a ruin, it looked like an alien spaceship. Omar explained that the vehicle had been imported years earlier by a collector, damaged in a garage fire, tied up in an ownership dispute, then eventually released for disposal after the estate was settled. If its identity and paperwork were valid, it could be worth several million restored. If. There was always an if. I touched the exposed carbon panel. The history rushed in. This time it was genuine. I saw the car whole. I saw it being driven through mountain roads. I saw it inside a spotless collection. I saw delivery. I saw the factory. My heart started beating faster. Then I noticed something else. At one point in its history, the car had been blue. Later, it had been silver. Later, it had been wrapped in matte black. The version in front of me had scorched silver paint. I could choose. I could restore not only condition but appearance from any genuine moment in its past. I lifted my hand before anybody noticed. The auction began that afternoon. There were only 6 serious bidders, 2 salvage companies, a parts exporter, a mysterious online bidder, a luxury dealer, and me. Minhyo handled the bidding because I had a dangerous tendency to take financial competition personally. The price climbed, 800,000, 900, 1 million, 1.2. Minhyo remained calm. I began sweating. At one point, the mysterious online bidder jumped by 200,000 at once. I whispered, "Destroy him." Minhyo whispered, "We are buying broken cars, not invading a country." Same feeling. At 1.5 million, the dealer stopped. At 1.7, the parts exporter stopped. At 1.9, only us and the online bidder remained. Minhyo looked at me. I thought about the Pagani, then the Ferraris, then the Rolls-Royces, then the concrete SUV. I nodded. 2 million. The online bidder immediately went 2.1. Minhyo cursed. I leaned toward him. 2.3. He stared at me. That is not how increments work. Make it emotional. He bid 2.3. Silence. The auction manager looked at the online screen. No response. Going once, going twice. Sold. I had just spent $2.3 million on a parking lot full of vehicular trauma. Minhyo sat back. Dinner is still on you. The next problem was transportation. I could have restored every car in the desert, but then we would need secure transport for pristine luxury vehicles, attract attention, and explain why a dead supercar cemetery suddenly looked like a motor show. So we rented an empty industrial hangar nearby and moved the cars in batches. For 2 days, tow trucks carried wreck after wreck inside. The local workers believed we were sorting for export. We paid well and asked them to leave the cars in marked zones. Then, after everyone went home, Minhyo locked the hangar doors. I stood in the center of 162 ruined vehicles. Minhyo put on safety goggles. I put on gloves. Not because gloves affected the power. I just thought they made me look professional. We began. The first row was easy. A flooded Bentley returned to pre-flood condition. A burned Aston Martin rebuilt itself. A Ferrari with missing wheels summoned 3 of them from nearby inventory piles and tried to summon the 4th from somewhere outside the building. We heard a metallic crash in the distance. Then another. Then a wheel blasted through a side door like it had been fired from a cannon. Minhyo stared at the hole. I stared at the wheel. We added another rule. Before restoring a vehicle, locate major detached components or accept that they may become airborne. The concrete SUV was more complicated. The concrete had been poured into the cabin after the vehicle was abandoned. If I restored the SUV while concrete remained, the interior would try to return beneath several tons of solid material. I did not know whether my power would politely eject it or create the world's most expensive fossil, so we hired a demolition crew to remove the concrete first. They worked all day. That night I touched the SUV. Its smashed interior returned. Leather seats inflated into shape. Electronics brightened. Windows repaired. The vehicle looked perfect. Then Minhyo found a small patch of dried concrete under the driver's seat and told me I had failed spiritually. By dawn we had restored 47 cars. By the second night, 90. By the third I felt like my arms had become noodles. That was when I discovered my power had a limit, not a strict number, a kind of fatigue. The more mass I rewound and the farther back I moved it, the more exhausted I became. A phone cost almost nothing. A watch barely registered. A car used a noticeable amount. A severely destroyed car restored through years of history felt like sprinting uphill. The Pagani was last. I saved it because I wanted the moment. Minhyo set up cameras for our private records. I touched the carbon body. I selected a version from shortly after original delivery. Blue paint, perfect interior, fresh tires, factory condition. I pulled. The fire reversed. Charred carbon reformed. The missing wheel rolled out of a storage room and snapped into place. Leather turned soft and new. Glass became flawless. Silver paint darkened, peeled backward through a black wrap, then revealed a deep blue so beautiful that both of us went silent. The engine rebuilt. The exhaust polished itself. Tiny fasteners returned. The car settled onto its suspension like it had simply awakened. Then the driver's door opened. Minhyo looked at me. I looked at him. No, I did not say anything. You were about to. I was going to say we should verify the brakes. You were going to say you should drive it. I can do both. 10 minutes later, Minhyo drove the Pagani around the hangar at 12 kilometers per hour while grinning like a child who had hacked reality. I walked beside him because I did not trust him. By the time we finished the entire lot, our 2.3 million purchase had become a collection worth tens of millions. That was when the mysterious online bidder found us. Her name was Lena Voss. She arrived at the hangar in a white suit, stepped out of a black SUV, and looked at the restored cars with absolutely no surprise. That bothered me. Normal reactions included screaming, swearing, religious confusion, financial arousal, and asking whether we were using nanotechnology. Lena simply walked down the row and inspected the Pagani. "You bought my lot," she said. I blinked. "Your lot?" She explained that she had been bidding on behalf of a European collector group. They wanted the same graveyard, not for parts, not for restoration, for one specific car. I immediately looked at the Pagani. She shook her head. Not that one. She walked to the back of the hangar. There, behind 2 restored sedans, sat an ugly little coupe we had barely noticed. It was not especially valuable. Old, gray, boxy. The rear bumper was cracked. One headlight was cloudy. Compared with the supercars around it, it looked like somebody had accidentally parked a toaster in a jewelry store. Lena pointed at it. "That?" Minhyo looked offended. "We spent $2 million fighting you for that?" Lena said the car itself did not matter. Something had once been hidden inside it. A small object. She did not know what. Her clients only knew the vehicle had belonged to a late industrialist named Anton Voss. Same surname. I looked at her. She looked back. Grandfather. Now it made sense. Anton Voss had apparently been an eccentric billionaire engineer who collected prototype machines, rare cars, strange patents, and secrets. After his death, his assets scattered. Lena had spent years recovering certain items. She believed he had hidden one of them inside this ordinary coupe. But the car had been stripped, repaired, resold, crashed, and eventually ended up in the salvage lot. Whatever had been hidden was probably long gone. She offered us $5 million for the car. Minho almost accepted before she finished the sentence. I did not, because the power had taught me one thing. If somebody offered $5 million for a $50,000 object, the object was not the valuable part. I walked to the coupe, touched the trunk, history, current state. Before crash, before previous owner, before repaint, before repairs. Then I noticed it. Years earlier, the trunk floor had been modified. A panel had been cut, a small metal box inserted. Later, the box had been removed. I could not rewind the car and recreate the box if the box had only been stored inside it. The box was a separate object, but I could restore the trunk to the physical state from when the hidden compartment existed, so I did. The carpet shifted. A clean rectangular seam appeared. Minho pulled the panel up, empty. Lena leaned closer. The compartment had a serial label. That label had been scratched away years ago. I touched the metal panel and rewound only the scratches. Letters returned. A code. VOS 7. Lena's expression finally changed. Not shock, recognition. She whispered something in German under her breath. Then she offered $10 million for the code. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because at some point during the last few months, my relationship with money had become unhealthy. Once, I had argued with a convenience store clerk over a $2 coupon. Now someone offered $10 million for 8 characters, and my first thought was that she seemed nervous. Nervous billionaires were expensive. I told her I did not sell mysteries until I knew what they were. She said that was unwise. Minho slowly moved behind me, which was his way of preparing to be brave while ensuring I stood closer to danger. Lena sighed. Then she told us the truth. VOS 7 was not an object, it was a project. Her grandfather had spent decades experimenting with material memory. My smile disappeared. Material memory. She explained that Anton believed physical objects retained traces of every state they had occupied. Stress patterns, chemical changes, microscopic deformations, quantum effects. Most scientists considered the idea useless because even if those traces existed, nobody could read them completely. Anton claimed he could. Then he claimed something more, that under certain conditions, matter might be pushed back toward an earlier stable configuration. Minho slowly turned to me. I stared at Lena. I had never told her about my power. She still did not seem surprised. She continued. VOS 7 was supposedly the 7th experimental device designed to manipulate physical history. Nobody knew if it worked. Anton's laboratory burned before his death. The project disappeared. Lena believed parts of it survived. I asked the obvious question. Why are you telling me this? She looked around at 162 cars that had gone from wreckage to perfect condition in less than a week. Because I think you already found it. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. My ability had appeared suddenly. No device, no machine, no mysterious meteor, no ancient ring. I had simply slapped a microwave. At least that was what I remembered. Then something in my mind clicked. 2 days before the microwave incident, I had gone to an estate liquidation sale. I had bought a box of random electronics for $12. Old cables, broken chargers, a calculator, a metal pen, a strange black wristband with no screen. I had thrown most of it on my desk. The wristband had been there the morning my power appeared. I had touched it. I had assumed it was dead. Then later I could not find it. At the time I thought I had thrown it away. Now I was not so sure. I told Lena nothing. Instead, I asked what VOS 7 looked like. She said nobody knew. That was convenient. She left after giving me a card. She did not threaten us. She did something worse. She said, "When you become curious, call me." Then she walked away. Minho waited until the hangar doors closed. Are you curious? Yes. Terrible. Extremely. We flew home the next morning. I went directly to my old apartment building. The landlord had rented my unit to someone else, but my former trash had been dumped months ago. I searched the basement storage. Nothing. I called the estate sale company. The sale had come from the possessions of a retired electronics dealer who had died without close family. Most items were bulk inventory from closed shops. No VOS connection. No mysterious billionaire laboratory. Then I checked my old photos. I had taken a picture of the random electronics box because I planned to list some parts online. I zoomed in. There. Black wristband. Smooth metal. No screen. A tiny marking near the clasp. I enhanced the image. Not enough resolution. Minho looked over my shoulder. Could be anything. I stared at the fuzzy mark. Then I had a thought. The photo itself was stored as digital information, so touching the phone would not reveal higher resolution that never existed. But the original phone camera sensor had physically captured the scene. Could I rewind the camera to the instant it took the picture? Technically, yes. Would that help? Probably not, unless the sensor itself retained physical light patterns for some tiny fraction of time, which sounded ridiculous. So naturally I tried. I touched my old backup phone. I moved its physical history backward. The battery charged in reverse. Scratches vanished. Installed components aged backward. I carefully stopped at the day of the estate sale. The device software also reverted because the stored electrical states on the memory chips were physical. That realization nearly made me drop it. The phone booted. Its files had returned to that date, including the original photo before cloud compression. I opened it. Higher resolution. Zoom. The wristband marking was visible. V7. Minyo sat down. I touched the photo with one finger as if that would somehow change the answer. It did not. Then I remembered what happened that night. I had plugged the wristband into several chargers trying to make it work. No response. Eventually I put it on. It felt warm. I fell asleep while wearing it. In the morning it was gone, and my microwave broke. I had assumed the wristband fell somewhere behind furniture. What if it had not? What if it had done something to me? Minyo had a suggestion. Try rewinding yourself. I reminded him my power did not work on living things. He nodded. Good, because that sounded dangerous after I said it. We spent the day searching. No wristband. Then I noticed something strange. My old desk was still in the building basement because the landlord had kept it. I touched the desktop. History unfolded. Dust. Moving. My apartment. Months of use. Then the night with the wristband. I could not see events directly. The desk only showed its own physical states, but scratches and pressure marks mattered. I rewound the surface to that night. A faint circular indentation appeared in the cheap wood where the wristband had rested. Next to it was a burn mark. Tiny, almost invisible. I rewound farther. The burn vanished. Forward. Burn returned. Something had heated the desk. I touched the metal bed frame. Same night. No clue. The floor. A faint scorch near the bed. My pillow zipper. Nothing. Then the old microwave. The landlord had moved it to the basement after I left. I touched it. Its history was now complicated because I had already rewound it once, but that meant something incredible. I could see my own previous restoration as part of the object's new history. The microwave remembered being old, then instantly becoming new. The moment of change was physically real. I moved backward to the seconds before my power activated. The microwave was broken. Electrical arc. Burned component. Then earlier. Normal. I inspected the history more carefully. There was a strange point when the microwave casing gained a tiny static charge despite being unplugged. At the exact same time, according to my memory, I had slapped it. Maybe VOS7 had altered me. Maybe it had altered the object. Maybe my body was not the source at all. I looked at my hand. Then Minyo pointed out a more practical problem. We still had 162 cars to sell. Mystery later, money now. He was right, so we listed the first 20 through a high-end auction house. That caused chaos. Collectors had already heard of second-chance restoration. When 20 nearly perfect salvage history exotics appeared at once, the internet went crazy. Experts inspected them. Again, no repair marks, no replacement structures. Original components had somehow returned. People invented theories, secret factory rebuilds, illegal prototype machines. Military nanobots, AI-controlled molecular welding. One forum claimed we used reverse rust frequencies. Minyo printed that one and framed it. The Pagani attracted the most attention. A famous collector offered $6 million before auction. We declined. The auction closed at $8.4 million. Our purchase of the entire graveyard had already paid for itself several times over. Then came the race. I had not planned a race. Races happen when people with expensive cars and fragile egos enter the same building. A young billionaire influencer named Theo Cruz bought one of our restored McLarens. He had 60 million followers, 7 energy drink sponsorships, and the attention span of a golden retriever near a tennis ball. He loved the car. He loved the restoration story more. He invited me to his private track. I declined. He offered to pay. I accepted. Minyo came because he said somebody needed to stop me from becoming interesting in a hospital. At the track, Theo had gathered a collection of absurd vehicles, modified supercars, race cars, a hypercar shaped like a missile, a custom electric monster with enough power to rotate a small moon. He wanted to test whether our restored McLaren performed like new. It did. Then one of his mechanics made a joke. What if you could make the tires new after every lap? I froze. Minyo saw my face. No. I touched the front tire. It returned to unused condition. Fresh rubber, full tread, perfect surface. Everyone stared. I had just revealed part of my power in front of 12 people. There are moments in life when you make a careful strategic decision. This was not one. This was me being too excited about tires. Theo exploded with joy. He immediately understood the possibilities. New tires after every run. Brake rotors reset. Suspension components reset. Battery restored to an earlier state of charge. Engines returned to pre-wear condition. A race car could be reset between laps like a video game. I made everyone sign brutal confidentiality agreements. Then we experimented. The results were stupid. Wonderful, glorious, financially irresponsible, stupid. Theo drove 10 hard laps. I restored the tires and brakes. He drove 10 more. Reset. Fuel was trickier because fuel inside the tank counted as a separate object depending on how I perceived the system. When I touched the entire car and rewound it, consumed fuel could return if it had physically been part of the car at the chosen moment, but so could everything else. That created problems. His helmet tried to fly backward toward a storage locker because it had been inside the car during the target state. We stopped using full car restoration while drivers were nearby. Then Theo asked a question that changed my business again. What about crashes? I knew where this was going. He had an old track car scheduled for destruction. We put it on a remote-controlled system, no driver, then sent it into a barrier at moderate speed. The front crumpled. I touched it. Reset. Perfect. Again. Crash. Reset. Again. Crash. Reset. After the 5th time, the barrier was more damaged than the car. Theo stared at me with the smile of a man inventing a dangerous sport. Jin, no. Jin, no. Imagine a demolition race with supercars that reset every round. Minyo raised a hand. I would watch that. Traitor. Within a week, Theo had built a private event around the concept. No public supernatural explanation. He marketed it as an experimental repair showcase. 10 damaged high-end cars purchased cheaply. Remote-controlled. Obstacle course. Crashes. Restoration between rounds. It was basically mechanical slapstick for rich people. I made more money in one weekend than some restoration shops made in a decade. I also learned I could restore road surfaces. A tire wall flew backward into formation. A smashed traffic cone became new. A broken camera drone repaired itself after hitting a windshield. At one point, a remote Lamborghini spun into a decorative ice sculpture. I touched the Lamborghini. It healed. Then I touched the sculpture. The shattered ice flew back together into the shape of a swan. Then I touched it too far. The swan became a rectangular block of ice. Theo laughed so hard he fell off a chair. The event ended with no injuries, 3 destroyed barriers, 7 perfectly restored cars, 1 confused insurance broker, and a waiting list of billionaires asking when the next one would happen. I should have felt unstoppable. Instead, that night, as I packed up my equipment, I found a black wristband sitting on the hood of my car. Smooth metal, no screen, tiny marking near the clasp, V7. I did not touch it. For once in my life, curiosity lost, mostly because the wristband had not been there 10 minutes earlier. Minyo stood beside me. Neither of us spoke. Then the band clicked. A thin line of light appeared across its surface. Not bright, just enough to reveal a small symbol, an arrow pointing backward. I took 1 step away. The wristband vibrated. Then words appeared, not on a screen. On the metal itself, as if the letters were forming inside the material. Calibration incomplete. Minyo read it. I read it. Then another line appeared. Compatible operator located. Another. Historical range 0.003%. I stared. 0.003%. If that number referred to my ability, then what I had been doing was apparently the tutorial. Before I could decide whether that was exciting or horrifying, the wristband went dark. Then it cracked down the middle. I flinched. Minyo smiled slowly. You can fix that. I looked at the broken device. He was right, and that was exactly what worried me. I did not fix the wristband that night. This was growth. Old Jin would have touched the mysterious broken billionaire science bracelet immediately, probably while eating noodles over it. New Jin put it inside a ceramic bowl, locked the bowl in a safe, locked the safe inside another safe, then moved both safes into our warehouse office. Minhyo watched the entire process. You know, if it explodes, the second safe probably won't help. It helps emotionally. That was enough. I went home. I slept for 40 minutes. Then I drove back to the warehouse. Growth had limits. The wristband sat exactly where I left it, cracked. Dark, ordinary. I put on safety glasses. Minhyo arrived 15 minutes later carrying coffee and the expression of a man who had known I would fail at self-control. We cleared the room. Then I touched V7 with one finger. History opened. But this was different. Most objects showed me a clear sequence of physical states. The wristband felt like a hallway full of locked doors. Current cracked state. Earlier whole state. Earlier dormant state. Earlier active state. Then static. Not emptiness, resistance. Something in the device's construction prevented me from reading farther. I selected the state immediately before it cracked. The metal snapped together. The line vanished. The surface became smooth. Then the device activated. A pale symbol appeared. The backward arrow. I removed my hand. Nothing exploded. Good start. The band displayed another message. Operator contact restored. Minhyo leaned toward it. Can it make coffee? The device displayed no response. I respected that. Then new text appeared. Calibration available. There was no button, no screen, no obvious controls, so of course I touched it again. The sensation changed. My ability expanded across the room. I did not rewind anything. I simply became aware. The metal desk under my other hand had history. The ceramic mug beside it had history. The concrete floor had history. The bolts in the shelving had history. Every non-living object around me suddenly felt like a stack of possible earlier versions waiting behind the present. Before, I needed direct physical contact. Now, while touching V7, I could feel objects within roughly 2 meters. I yanked my hand away. The awareness vanished. Minhyo raised both eyebrows. I explained. He immediately put his coffee 2 meters away. Do not accidentally undrink this. Reasonable. We experimented carefully. With one hand on the wristband, I focused on a scratched wrench sitting on the desk. I could sense its past. I tried pulling it backward. Nothing. Apparently awareness did not mean control. Then V7 displayed a number. Range calibration 0.004%. It had increased. I had repaired it and my range improved by almost nothing. That meant the device might be damaged in ways I could not see. So I pushed deeper into its history. I searched for older intact states. The resistance remained. I selected a point months earlier. The wristband changed. A tiny dent disappeared. The internal warmth increased. The display became brighter. 0.009%. I went farther. 1 year. The band became colder. A microscopic scratch vanished. 0.021%. Minhyo and I exchanged a look. I kept going. 2 years. 3, 4. Each time the device became more complete. Not visibly, internally. Whatever complicated components existed inside were recovering from degradation I had never noticed. Then I reached a state that felt stable. The band pulsed once. Calibration restored. The number appeared. Historical access, 0.1%. I laughed. Minhyo did not. What? We are celebrating 0.1%. He had a point. Then my ability changed again. The entire warehouse became loud, not with sound, with history. I could feel objects through the floor. Cars, tools, shelves, light fixtures, walls. Every non-living thing within about 20 meters had a presence, a kind of weight in time. I nearly fell. I released V7, silence. For the first time I understood why the wristband might have vanished after my first night wearing it. Maybe it did not vanish, maybe it had integrated somehow with my ability, then later separated. Or maybe I had accidentally rewound it into some state where it physically relocated. I did not know. What I did know was that V7 acted like an amplifier, that opened possibilities. Terrible, wonderful possibilities. We tested range without restoring anything valuable. A pile of dented aluminum cans became our laboratory. At 1 meter I could reverse them while touching V7. At 5 meters, also yes. At 10, difficult. At 20, barely. Direct touch remained far stronger, but now I could select individual objects from a distance if I concentrated. That solved the flying parts problem. Before restoring a car, I could sense whether major original components were nearby. It also let me do something far more useful. I could isolate components without touching them directly. A car was made of thousands of objects. Before, touching the whole vehicle usually made my power treat the assembled machine as a single object if I imagined it that way. But with V7, I could focus on one brake rotor, one seat, one control module, one screw. That level of precision was ridiculous. A mechanic brought us an engine with one damaged bearing. I restored only the bearing. A jeweler brought us a necklace with one replaced stone. I rewound only the setting to reveal when the stone had been changed. A film studio brought us a crashed stunt car. I restored the body but left all the intentional modifications intact by selecting a state after the stunt cage had been installed. Our business became faster, cleaner, more impossible. Then we got a call from a yacht owner. I hated boats, not personally. I had just noticed that everything expensive involving water eventually developed an insurance claim. The yacht was called Serenity Dawn, which was funny because there was nothing serene about its condition. It had struck something underwater near a private island. The hull was damaged. One engine room flooded. The interior had taken water. Repairs would cost millions and take months. The owner, Rafael Morano, had heard of us through Victor Hahn, the watch billionaire. Rafael wanted speed. He was hosting a ridiculous birthday party in 3 weeks, and apparently rescheduling was less acceptable than hiring the man who could bully time. We flew out. Serenity Dawn sat in a dry dock looking wounded. The hull had a massive torn section. Workers had already removed furniture, electronics, and damaged panels. That was a problem. The yacht as an object no longer contained everything it had before the accident, but if the removed components were nearby, my power might call them back. I did not want a 300-kilogram marble countertop flying across a shipyard, so we spent a full day mapping parts. Minyo labeled everything. The crew moved major components into safe positions. Raphael watched from an air-conditioned lounge while pretending this was normal. Then I placed one hand on the hull and one on V7. The history of the yacht opened. Recent damage, impact, ocean, maintenance, earlier voyages. Original delivery. I selected a moment 1 hour before the collision. Then I pulled. The hull groaned. Water trapped in cavities flowed backward, raced through broken spaces, and launched out of the vessel in sheets. Bent metal straightened. Fiberglass reformed. Wood panels smoothed. Disconnected wiring slithered back into channels. Removed furniture started moving. Slowly at first, then faster. Minyo shouted from the dock. A sofa slid across the floor, made a turn no sofa should be able to make, and shot through an open doorway. A bar stool rolled upright. Cabinet doors attached themselves. A giant television lifted off a padded cart and floated horizontally toward the yacht like a very expensive ghost. We had expected motion, we had not expected coordination. The restoration path seemed to follow the object's actual historical relationship with its missing components. If the component belonged to the yacht at the selected moment, it tried to return. Workers stood behind barriers filming with their phones. A marble countertop began sliding. Everybody screamed. It moved 6 meters, stopped, rotated 90 degrees, then gently seated itself into the galley. Minyo removed his safety glasses. That was classy. The engine room was next. Damaged machinery repaired. Corrosion vanished. Fuel lines returned. Then one detached propeller, which had been sitting on a pallet outside, began rolling toward the stern. This was not classy. This was a 600-kilogram metal wheel of death. People scattered. I focused through V7. For the first time, I stopped a returning component mid-restoration. The propeller froze. Not in time. I simply stopped rewinding that object. Then we moved it safely into position and resumed. It attached. The yacht became whole. Raphael walked aboard. Everything looked exactly as it had 1 hour before the accident, including, unfortunately, the dining table. The dining table contained a full birthday cake. Not from the upcoming birthday. From a crew member's birthday held the day before the collision. Apparently the cake had been physically on the table during the historical state I selected, and because the table setting had become associated with the assembled interior in my perception, part of it returned. The cake looked perfect. Nobody knew whether it was safe to eat. Minyo volunteered. I stopped him. We had enough mysteries. Raphael paid $9 million. Then he asked if I could restore a private island. I laughed. He did not. The island had a damaged beach club from a storm. Technically the beach club was non-living. So was the pier. So were the buildings. I should have said no. Instead, I asked for photos. 3 days later, I was touching a resort. That was when scale stopped being funny. A building had an enormous physical history. Every wall, every repair, every pipe, every renovation, every chair, every broken tile, every nail. Thousands of separate objects had become one system over time. When I placed my hand on the storm-damaged beach club, I almost drowned in information. The building had been remodeled 6 times. An old kitchen became a lounge. The lounge became a private dining room. A wall had moved. The roof had changed. A pool had been expanded. If I restored the entire building to before the storm without control, I could accidentally erase the newest renovation. So I used V7 like a filter. Roof, rewind 3 weeks. Windows, 3 weeks. Exterior walls, 3 weeks. Furniture, 3 weeks. Pool equipment, 3 weeks. Artwork, 2 months because the newest pieces had been added later and were not damaged. It felt like conducting an orchestra where every instrument was a different decade. Then I pulled. The beach club healed section by section. Broken windows rose from sand, roof tiles flew back, cracked concrete sealed, bent railings straightened, a shattered glass sculpture reassembled in midair. Sand that had blown into the building moved backward through doors in little rivers. A beach umbrella shot out of a palm tree and planted itself beside the pool. Then a jet ski that had been blown into the lobby rolled backward through the entire building, down a staircase, across a deck and into the ocean. Everyone watched silently. Minyo whispered, "Advanced restoration." At this point it had become a prayer. The beach club took 2 hours. I nearly passed out afterward. Scale fatigue was brutal. V7 improved control, not energy. That was important. I could restore a building. I could not casually restore a city. Good. I did not want city responsibilities. Cities had committees. The island job generated a new kind of client, real estate owners. A hotel chain wanted us to restore a historic ballroom after water damage. A casino wanted a fire-damaged penthouse repaired overnight. A billionaire wanted his childhood home returned to the exact appearance it had when he was 10. That request was emotionally sweet until we discovered the house had been renovated 14 times and was currently worth $40 million. I told him I could restore individual rooms without erasing later structural improvements. He chose his old bedroom. I touched the walls. Wallpaper returned. A desk reappeared from storage. Old stickers came back on a closet door. The billionaire, a terrifying man who had acquired 6 companies through hostile takeovers, sat on the floor and cried when his childhood height marks reappeared on the wall. Then he paid me $5 million and asked if I could do the garage. The garage contained a 1980s sports car he had sold 30 years earlier. The car was not there. I could restore the empty garage to its old state, but I could not create the car from nothing because the car had always been a separate object. That limitation saved reality from becoming too easy. I could rewind what existed. I could not summon unrelated objects from the past if they were no longer part of the physical system. At least, I thought so. Then, the dinosaur happened. It was not a real dinosaur. I need to make that clear. A private museum had a full-scale animatronic dinosaur built for an exhibition 20 years earlier. It had been stored outside, damaged by weather, then partially dismantled. The owner wanted it restored for a charity event. Easy. I touched the metal frame. Rewind. Panels returned. Artificial skin stretched smooth. Motors repaired. Paint brightened. The animatronic Tyrannosaur stood 12 meters long and looked brand new. Then its control system returned to the exact powered state from a demonstration in 2008. The dinosaur turned its head. I screamed. Minyo screamed. A museum curator screamed. The Tyrannosaur roared. Then it took 2 mechanical steps forward because the old programming resumed. 3 wealthy donors ran into a gift shop. I lunged for the emergency switch. The dinosaur's tail knocked over a display case. I touched the display case while running. The glass rebuilt behind me. The dinosaur stepped onto a velvet rope. I restored the rope without thinking. It whipped backward around a stanchion and nearly tied Minyo's ankles together. Finally, the curator killed the power. Silence. The dinosaur froze with its mouth open. Minyo bent over, breathing heavily. Living things don't work. That is not living. It disagrees. The charity event became a massive success because security footage leaked, and everyone thought the restoration company had intentionally made the dinosaur chase us as promotional entertainment. We gained another 1 million followers. I did not have social media before this. Theo Cruz created an account for me without permission. He named it Jin Fixes Reality. I made him change it. He changed it to Jin Touches Stuff. I made him change it again. Eventually we settled on Second Chance Official. The internet immediately made memes anyway. People sent videos of broken objects asking me to touch them. Cracked phones, burned sneakers, bent bicycles. One man sent a photo of his empty wallet. I could not help him. Another sent a photo of his marriage certificate. Also not touching that. Our secrecy was over. Not completely. The public knew we had an impossible restoration method. They did not know exactly how it worked. Most people assumed advanced technology because humans preferred robots to magic if investors were involved. That attracted competition. The largest repair conglomerate in Asia, Titan Renewal Group, announced a new molecular restoration platform. They claimed they could achieve results similar to ours using patented scanning, additive manufacturing, and microscopic material reconstruction. Their CEO was Dr. Elias Brandt. Tall, silver-haired, always calm. He gave interviews explaining that second chance restoration had popularized a market Titan had studied for years. Minyo watched one interview and threw popcorn at the screen. I did not care. Competition was normal. Then Titan restored a burned Ferrari. On live television. It looked perfect. My popcorn stopped halfway to my mouth. They had a wrecked Ferrari on stage. Black shell, destroyed front, burned cabin. A large machine surrounded it. Lights flashed. Panels moved. Robotic arms spun. After 20 minutes, curtains opened. A flawless red Ferrari sat inside. Experts inspected it. Factory dimensions. Matching materials. Perfect paint. The media went wild. Investors went wild. My phone went wild. Clients wanted to know whether our advantage had disappeared. I watched the footage 3 times. Something was wrong. The machine looked impressive, but the transformation had happened behind curtains. Could be a swap. Too easy. Titan knew experts would check identity numbers. Could still transfer plates and identifiers, but that would leave evidence. Unless they had better fabrication than I thought. Then I noticed the windshield. Before the restoration, one tiny corner of the burned windshield remained. There was a sticker. After restoration, the new windshield had the same sticker, same faded edge, same tiny air bubble. That did not make sense. A newly manufactured replacement would not reproduce random wear exactly. They had restored the original object, or replaced it with an unbelievably detailed duplicate. I needed to know. Minyo suggested buying Titan stock. I suggested breaking into their laboratory. We compromised. We bought one of their restored cars. Titan auctioned the demonstration Ferrari for charity. I bid anonymously. The price reached 1.8 million. I won. When the car arrived at our warehouse, I locked the doors. Then I touched the hood. History opened. Burned. No. That was impossible. The current flawless hood had once been burned. I moved backward. The paint scorched. Metal warped. Farther. Original condition. The same hood had genuinely been restored. Titan had my ability. Not exactly. I inspected more deeply. The object's history contained something strange at the moment of restoration. Instead of smoothly reversing through previous states, the physical change occurred almost instantly, but every atom returned to a configuration matching an older state. It was not replacement, it was rewind. I called Lena Voss. She answered on the first ring. I told her Titan Renewal Group had a working restoration machine. She was silent for 3 seconds. Then she said, "Do not touch it again." I looked at my hand already resting on the Ferrari. Too late. She explained that Anton Voss had built more than one project. Voss 7 was only one branch. There were at least 9 known designations, some focused on reading physical history, some on reversing materials, some on storing a reference state, some were theoretical. Titan may have recovered Voss technology years ago. I asked why they were only revealing it now. Lena did not know. That answer lasted 12 hours. Then Titan challenged me publicly, not to a lawsuit, not to a debate, to a restoration competition. Dr. Brandt announced an event called the Impossible Auction. Both companies would receive identical categories of destroyed luxury objects: cars, art, jewelry, furniture, technology, historical pieces. Each would restore as much value as possible in 24 hours. Everything would be sold afterward for charity. The internet loved it. Theo called me before I finished watching the announcement. "You have to do this." Minyo shouted the same thing from across the room. I was less excited. If Titan had Voss technology, the event was not about charity. It was about measuring me. They wanted to see my limits. Range, speed, precision, fatigue, what I could and could not restore. So I declined, publicly, politely. Then Dr. Brandt added one final item to the auction list. A photograph appeared on screen. A burned painting. Not just any painting. A missing companion piece to the masterpiece I had restored for Madame Seo. Experts had believed it lost forever. Titan claimed to possess the remains. The current value was nearly 0. Restored value could exceed 50 million. Dr. Brandt smiled into the camera. Then he said second chance restoration was welcome to examine it before refusing. That man understood me too well. Minyo looked at me. I looked at the painting. Then at V7. Then back at the painting. I hate when villains use interesting garbage against me. I accepted the competition 12 minutes later. This was not because Dr. Brandt had manipulated me. I want that stated clearly. I made an independent adult decision after carefully considering every factor. The main factor was the burned painting. The second factor was that Minhyo had already ordered matching team jackets. The impossible auction took place inside a converted aircraft hangar. Titan Renewal Group built a dramatic glass laboratory on one side. Second Chance got an open work area on the other. Titan had robotic arms, scanners, servers, engineers, technicians, white coats, holographic displays, and enough cables to strangle a subway station. We had 2 folding tables, a toolbox, 3 fire extinguishers, safety goggles, V7 hidden under my sleeve, and Minhyo's vending machine. Theo Cruz served as one of the hosts. That was a mistake. He introduced Titan as the future of molecular reconstruction. Then he introduced us as those guys who fixed a yacht by touching it. Technically accurate, the rules were simple: 10 rounds, 1 object category per round. Each team had a limited time. Independent experts verified authenticity and condition. Restored pieces went to auction. Highest total sale value won. Dr. Brandt greeted me before the cameras started. He was polite. Too polite. People who plan nothing are friendly. People who plan something are extremely friendly. He looked at my right hand, then my left, then my wrist. V7 was under my sleeve. Interesting. The first category was watches. Titan received a crushed rare chronograph. We received a gold tourbillon that had spent 2 years at the bottom of a lake. The timer started. Titan's machines scanned their watch. Tiny mechanical arms moved under a sealed chamber. Lights flickered. I touched ours. Water damage reversed. Rust vanished. The case polished itself. The strap regained color. The movement returned to perfect condition. 4 seconds. I placed the watch on the table. Minho rang a hotel desk bell he had brought for no reason. Titan took 90 seconds. Their watch also emerged perfect. Round 1. Tie-on quality. We won speed. The internet immediately became unbearable. Round 2 was furniture. Titan got a fire-damaged 18th century writing desk. We got a grand piano that had fallen through a ballroom floor. The piano was split. Keys missing, leg broken, soundboard cracked. Worse, several original parts had been separated and placed somewhere among hundreds of boxes behind us. The organizers wanted to test whether we could restore incomplete objects. Titan's desk was all present. I understood the trap. If I restored the piano as a whole, missing components might fly through the hangar. There were cameras everywhere. I could not have wooden piano pieces launching across an audience. So I touched V7. The historical awareness spread. I sensed the piano, then every nearby object. Boxes became points in physical history. I searched for pieces that had once belonged to the same system. It felt like matching fingerprints made of time. 1 box, 3 boxes, 7. I pointed. Minho and the crew moved them beside the piano. We opened them. Keys, pedal assembly, decorative trim, 1 carved leg, a tiny bag of screws. Theo stared. How did you know? I told him good labeling. None of the boxes were labeled. He accepted this because Theo believed confidence was a technical skill. I touched the piano. The pieces returned. Wood repaired. Strings tightened. The black finish smoothed. Keys brightened. The instrument became stunning. Then it played 1 loud chord by itself because part of the action mechanism returned under tension. Half the audience jumped. I bowed. Minho rang the bell. Titan finished their desk 6 minutes later. When both pieces sold, the piano brought more. Round 3 was fashion. I nearly left. I can restore a transmission. I can restore a painting. But the fashion category contained a vintage crocodile handbag, 2 historic dresses, a pair of famous stage shoes, and a designer coat that had been ripped in half during an argument between celebrities. Titan received the handbag. We got the coat. The coat had originally been white, then dyed pink, then customized with silver stitching, then damaged. The owner wanted the customized version restored, not the original. That was easy. I selected the state one day before the argument. The coat repaired. Then 1 sleeve began sliding across the table toward the torso because the organizers had intentionally separated it. It reattached. Perfect. Theo asked whether I could rewind the argument. No. He looked disappointed. Round 4 was electronics. Titan got a water-damaged prototype laptop. We got an early production music player owned by a famous singer. The device had been crushed and corrupted. Simple physically, complicated digitally. If I restored it to an earlier physical state, the flash memory would also return to the data stored at that time. That meant private files. I did not want to accidentally display 20-year-old celebrity messages on live television, so I restored only the outer structure and power system. Then I isolated the memory chip. Its current corrupted state remained. An independent data expert handled the rest. Dr. Brandt watched closely. He noticed I had selectively restored components. Titan's machine could apparently do the same, but much slower. Round 5 was sculpture. We received a marble statue with no head. Titan got a bronze figure crushed by a fallen wall. The missing marble head sat somewhere in the hangar. Again, historical matching. I found it inside a wooden crate marked ceramic garden pot. Minyo opened the crate. There was the head. There was also a ceramic garden pot. Nobody could explain why. I restored the statue. The head floated 6 centimeters into position and fused along the original break with no seam. The audience gasped. Dr. Brandt did not. He was collecting data. I could feel it, so I decided to give him bad data. Round 6 was vehicles, of course. Titan brought out a burned Lamborghini. We received a Rolls-Royce with front-end damage. Too easy. I touched the Rolls-Royce and intentionally restored it slowly, panel by panel. I pretended to concentrate. I paused, wiped sweat from my forehead. Minyo understood immediately and handed me water like I was performing brain surgery. Titan's machine finished first. Their Lamborghini rolled out spotless. Then I completed ours. The audience thought Titan had won speed. Good. Let Brandt believe cars exhausted me more than they did. Round 7 was historical weapons. Nothing dangerous remained functional. These were ceremonial antiques. Titan got a corroded suit of armor. We got a decorative sword broken into 3 pieces. I restored the sword to a museum-safe state after its edge had already been intentionally dulled decades earlier. That detail impressed the experts. I could choose not just new, but historically appropriate condition. Round 8 was documents. This one scared me. A document is an object, but its value often comes from information placed on it. If I rewind paper too far, the ink disappears. Titan received a damaged handwritten letter. We received a water-stained signed manuscript page. The signature was genuine. The page had been folded, then stained, then partially torn. I needed to reverse damage without removing writing, so I selected micro-regions, paper fibers around the tear, rewind. Water-stained regions, rewind only to after the ink dried. Fold line, rewind. Ink untouched. V7 made the control possible. The page flattened, stain disappeared, tear vanished, every written mark remained. The document expert looked at it under magnification, then looked at me, then checked again. The paper fibers showed no modern repair. Because there had been no repair, only history. Titan's letter came out beautifully too, but one line of faded writing became darker than it had originally been at the chosen age. That told me something. Titan was not truly rewinding freely. They were reconstructing toward a stored or calculated reference. Close, powerful, but not the same. Round 9 was the painting. The hangar went quiet. Workers rolled out 2 black cases. Titan's case contained a damaged 20th century painting worth millions if repaired. Ours contained the burned companion masterpiece Brandt had used to lure me. Madame CO herself joined the expert panel. She recognized the remaining canvas. Her hands trembled. I approached. Then I stopped. Something felt wrong. The painting was burned, real, old. But when I touched the frame, the history did not match the story. The frame had been attached recently. Fine. Frames get replaced. I touched the canvas. Fire. Storage. Before fire. Blank. My chest tightened. There was no painting before the fire. The pigment had never existed. Someone had taken an old blank canvas, burned it, then added a few surviving-looking fragments afterward. It was fake. Not a normal fake. A fake designed specifically for me. Brandt wanted to see whether I would expose it. If I reversed the canvas publicly, the false fragments would vanish and reveal blank cloth. That would prove I could inspect an object's actual historical states. Maybe he already suspected, but proof mattered. I lifted my hand. Theo whispered that the timer was running. Minyo watched me. Dr. Brandt watched me. The audience watched me. I smiled. Then I did not restore the canvas. I restored the wooden frame. The frame rewound. Modern scratches vanished. A shipping label reappeared on the back. The label contained a warehouse code. Then I stopped. I asked the organizers to verify the code. Confusion. The clock kept running. Titan's machine was already repairing their painting. An event staff member checked the label database. The frame had come from a Titan renewal storage facility 3 weeks earlier. The crowd murmured, "Doctor." Brandt remained calm. I then restored a tiny metal staple holding the canvas to the frame. Not the canvas, the staple. Its surface corrosion vanished. Then a microscopic manufacturer stamp became readable. The staple was new. Finally, I restored a smear of adhesive at the rear edge. It returned to the state before dust had stuck to it. The adhesive was also new. I never touched the painted surface again. I announced that our item had been assembled recently and requested authentication before restoration. Madame Seo examined it. Pigment tests came back inconsistent. Under imaging, the supposed surviving painted fragments were modern. The lost masterpiece was a trap. The audience went insane. Theo loved it. Minyo rang the bell so hard it broke. Then I touched the bell and fixed it without thinking. That got a bigger cheer than the fraud reveal. Brandt argued that Titan had purchased the piece from an outside broker and believed it genuine. Possible. Maybe even true. But his eyes told me he had expected a different outcome. Round 9 was voided. Then came round 10. Nobody knew the final category until the doors opened. A tow vehicle pulled in something covered by a huge cloth. Another entered from the opposite side. The cloths dropped. Titan received a wrecked private jet fuselage section. We received an entire damaged helicopter. Theo nearly climbed onto the announcer table. The helicopter had made a hard emergency landing. Blades destroyed. Landing gear collapsed. Tail damaged. No fatalities. The organizers had removed fuel and dangerous consumables. Several key components were detached and placed in marked safe zones. The timer, 30 minutes. Titan's jet section entered their largest machine. I walked around the helicopter. This was not technically harder than a car, just larger. But I wanted Brandt confused, so I did something new. I did not touch the helicopter. I touched V7 under my sleeve. Then I placed my palm on the concrete floor. The floor connected physically to the landing gear. The landing gear connected to the airframe. Not as one object historically, but as a contact chain. I focused. The helicopter's presence appeared. I selected it from 2 meters away. Then I pulled. The restoration began without direct contact. Gasps. I acted surprised too. Good performance. The bent skids straightened. Tail panels reformed. Windows repaired. Detached rotor components moved from their safe zones. I controlled each one. Blade roots aligned. Bolts returned. The cabin reset. Paint brightened. The helicopter became airworthy looking in 9 minutes. Independent aviation engineers still needed to certify it, obviously. I was not going to become known as the man who touched a helicopter and immediately told someone to fly it. Titan finished at 14 minutes. We won. The auction total broke records. Charity received a fortune. The public declared Second Chance the winner. Theo poured sparkling water over Minho because actual champagne near electronics violated venue rules. I shook Brandt's hand. He smiled. Then he whispered something only I could hear. Thank you for confirming remote access. My stomach dropped. He had seen through my bad data. Not everything, but enough. I smiled back. Thank you for confirming reference reconstruction. For the first time his expression changed. Tiny, but real. He had not expected me to understand his machine. We both walked away pretending the other person had not just revealed a dangerous secret. That night, Lena met us at a 24-hour noodle shop because apparently international technology conspiracies still needed snacks. She had watched the event. She agreed with my theory. Titan's machine was likely based on a Voss design that could reconstruct an object toward a recorded historical pattern but not freely browse every state. Think of it like a save point. My ability was a timeline. Their machine needed a target reference. That raised a question. How had they restored the burned Ferrari if no complete reference scan existed? Lena had an answer I did not like. Maybe Voss technology could extract a reference from the object itself, but only one or a few stable states, like finding the strongest footprint in its physical memory. That would explain why Titan could make old objects look new. But it could not explain everything. The fake painting was likely intended to test whether I could detect a state that never existed. I could. Titan now knew. I asked Lena why Anton built these devices. She finally told me something she had avoided before. Her grandfather was obsessed with waste, not household waste, civilizational waste. Buildings decayed, machines wore out, art burned, materials corroded, factories consumed resources to replace things that had once been perfectly good. Anton believed that if matter could be returned to earlier physical states, humanity could reuse almost anything indefinitely. That sounded noble. Then she added that he was also an eccentric billionaire who once spent $12 million trying to make a toaster that never produced uneven bread. Better. I was starting to like him. Apparently Voss 7 was designed as a portable human interface, not the strongest system, the most flexible. It needed an operator because human perception helped define what counted as one object. That explained why my power behaved differently depending on whether I thought of a car as one machine or thousands of components. V7 translated intent. The device had somehow bonded its control system to me during the night I wore it. I asked whether it could be removed. Lena shrugged. Wonderful. Then V7 activated under my sleeve. It displayed a message I had never seen. External anchor detected. A direction arrow appeared, pointing straight across the noodle shop. I turned. There was a refrigerator. I walked toward it. Arrow shifted. I passed the refrigerator. Storage room. Back door. Alley. Minyo followed. Lena followed. The arrow pointed down the street. We got into her car. It led us 20 kilometers across the city, then into an industrial district, then to a shipping warehouse. The building was closed. The arrow pointed inside. We did not break in. Again, growth. Lena called someone. 10 minutes later, she had the owner's number. 20 minutes after that, we were inside under the excuse of inspecting a shipment linked to her company. V7 guided me to a stack of crates. One crate contained antique machine tools imported from Europe. Another contained vintage lamps. Another contained a damaged jukebox. The arrow pointed at the jukebox. I touched it. History, current damage, shipping, storage, restaurant, repair shop, earlier ownership. Then something unusual. For several years, the jukebox had contained a small hidden module attached behind its speaker enclosure. The module was gone now. Again, separate object, but the mounting bracket remained. I rewound the bracket. A serial mark returned. VOS 3. Lena went pale. VOS 3 was a state anchor, a device capable of recording and imposing a physical reference. Titan's technology. The module had been hidden in the jukebox years ago, then removed. But V7 had detected the historical residue of another VOS device from kilometers away. That was new. The calibration number increased, 0.13%. I stared. Apparently using V7 near-related technology strengthened its access, like unlocking achievements in the world's most expensive game. The jukebox owner agreed to sell it for $3,000. I bought it, then restored it. The machine lit up. Music started playing at full volume. Everyone in the warehouse jumped. The owner demanded $5,000 because it worked now. I respected the negotiation and paid him. Back at our facility, we examined the restored VOS 3 mounting bracket. No module. But the bracket's own history included tiny physical pressure marks from the attached device, screw positions, contact surfaces, heat patterns. Could I reconstruct the missing device from those clues? No, my power did not create separate objects, but maybe I could find where it went. The bracket had scratches from removal. The person who removed VOS 3 used a specific screwdriver that did not help. The jukebox casing had fingerprints and dust at the time, but reversing the dust would not create biological material if it was no longer present. Then Minho noticed an old service sticker, a repair company name. We searched records. The jukebox had been serviced 8 years earlier by a small electronics shop. The shop still existed. The owner remembered the machine because the customer had asked him to remove a strange tracker box from inside. He had handed the box back to the customer. Name on receipt, Samuel Pike. We found Samuel. He was not a scientist, not a billionaire, not a secret agent. He was a retired accountant living in a suburban house with 12 cats. He had owned the jukebox. He remembered the strange module. He had thrown it into a drawer. Then later sold a box of electronics at a garage sale. I nearly collapsed. Of course, the most advanced material history technology on Earth was moving through society as miscellaneous junk. Samuel gave us the address of the person who bought the box. That person had sold some items online. We traced a reseller, then a collector, then an electronics recycler. The recycler had processed the module 8 years ago, shredded, separated, metals recovered, circuit materials sorted, gone. Lena looked devastated. I did not, because shredded was not the same as gone. If the physical materials still existed, and if they could still be considered parts of the original object somehow, maybe history remembered. We tracked the recycling batch. Most metal had been sold to a specialty refiner. Records led to a manufacturer. The recovered alloy went into industrial components. Those components went into elevators, 43 elevators, across 6 cities. Minyo stared at the spreadsheet. We are going to touch elevators? Yes. All of them? Yes. He sighed. Dinner is still on you. We started with the nearest building, a luxury hotel. I touched the elevator door. Nothing. Wrong alloy batch. Second building. Nothing. Third. Nothing. At the 4th location, V7 vibrated the moment I entered the lobby. The historical residue was there. A portion of VOS 3's metal had become part of the elevator motor assembly. Only a portion. maybe 12% of the original module's structural alloy. Not enough to recreate the whole device, I thought. Then I touched the motor housing. Its history opened. Current elevator part, manufacturing, machined alloy, cast billet, refined metal, mixed recovered sources. And inside that mixture, one tiny thread of history connected backward to VOS3. I followed it. For the first time, my awareness jumped across an object identity change. The metal had been one thing, then melted, then mixed, then became another. Normally I stopped before raw materials because going too far could dismantle the object. Now V7 let me isolate only the atoms that had once belonged to the module. I could feel them, a scattered memory inside a new machine. My hands started shaking. This meant an object did not need to remain physically intact for its history to exist. Its material remembered. I could potentially pull those atoms backward toward the earlier state, but if I did, I would rip metal out of an elevator motor. Bad, very bad. People liked elevators with complete motors, so I stopped. We now had a new rule. Do not restore recycled ancient super technology while it is supporting vertical transportation. The hotel manager was grateful without understanding why. We needed a safer way. If we could identify all recovered material from VOS3, collect the objects containing it, then rewind only those atoms while the items were disassembled in a controlled facility, maybe the module could come back, not created, reassembled from its own scattered matter. That was technically within the rule. Same material, earlier state, just an extremely aggressive restoration. I looked at the list of 43 elevators. Minyo looked at me. Lena looked at me. Then my phone rang. It was Rafael Morano, the yacht billionaire. His private jet had been hit by a catering truck. I closed my eyes. Somewhere in the universe, expensive objects were actively hunting me. Rafael's private jet had not been badly damaged. That was the good news. The bad news was that the catering truck was still attached to it. I arrived at the airport and found the truck's front corner buried in the side of the fuselage near the service door. Nobody was hurt. Apparently the driver had sneezed at the worst possible moment, rolled forward and transformed $300,000 of aircraft skin into modern sculpture. Raphael stood 10 meters away wearing a linen suit and looking personally betrayed by transportation. I walked around the impact. The truck was a separate object. The jet was one object. The catering cart inside the truck was another. The sandwiches were many small objects and absolutely not my responsibility. I used V7 to isolate the aircraft structure. Then I rewound the fuselage to 5 minutes before impact. Metal unfolded. Fasteners returned. Insulation expanded. Paint repaired. The catering truck remained exactly where it was. For half a second, the restored aircraft tried to occupy the same space as the truck. I stopped. Everyone stared at me. I had just rediscovered the tree and Maserati problem, except now the tree had sandwiches. We backed the truck away. Then I resumed. The aircraft became perfect. Raphael clapped once. The catering driver looked relieved. Then Raphael pointed at the truck. "You can fix that too?" I could. I touched it. The bumper straightened. Headlight repaired. Paint returned. Unfortunately, I selected a state from before the sandwiches had been loaded. The rear cargo doors opened by themselves. 8 insulated food containers rolled backward down the loading ramp. One lid popped open. 40 tiny luxury sandwiches slid across the tarmac in neat reverse formation, climbed into a catering cart, and disappeared into the truck's earlier loading arrangement. I stopped the rewind. There was a long silence. Minyo picked up one sandwich. Still cold. That was how we accidentally became a viral airport video. Again. At this point, I stopped trying to control the internet. I focused on the elevators. Recovering VOS3 required money, logistics, legal agreements, and an uncomfortable amount of explaining why I wanted to buy used elevator motor parts from 6 different building owners. Fortunately, I had money. Enough money makes strange requests become specialized acquisition projects. We replaced every affected elevator component with new certified hardware at our expense. The old parts came to our warehouse. 43 assemblies. Some contained no VOS material. Some contained microscopic amounts. 7 contained enough to matter. V7 identified the relevant metal. We stripped away unrelated components. Then I arranged the alloy pieces on a reinforced table. Lena stood behind glass. Minyo stood behind 2 layers of glass because he said he had learned from the propeller. I wore V7. I touched the largest metal fragment. History opened. Elevator motor housing. Machined alloy. billet, refined mixture, shredded electronics. Then, deeper, the original VOS 3 casing. I could feel the other scattered fragments around the room, not as separate objects, as missing parts of one former identity. I reached for that identity. Every piece moved. Tiny grains pulled from cut metal. A sliver rose out of a bracket. Powder jumped from a tray. Fragments scraped across the reinforced table. Then the old elevator parts began deforming as selected atoms left their current structures. This was why we had replaced them. The extracted material gathered in the center. It did not melt. It simply remembered. Metal curved. Contact pads formed. Internal channels appeared. But the module was incomplete. The alloy was only part of VOS 3. Other materials were missing. Copper, ceramic, rare conductive elements, tiny crystals, polymer, whatever electronics Anton Voss had used. V7 detected several materials in the same recycling chain, but not all. I stopped. On the table sat 1/3 of a strange black module, not broken, not cut. It looked like the rest had been erased. Lena almost touched it. I stopped her. We needed more material. The recycler's records became our treasure map. Copper from the batch had gone into plumbing fittings. Ceramic had gone to an industrial supplier. Recovered gold had entered electronics manufacturing. Polymers had been burned for energy. That last part seemed fatal. Material burned for energy was dispersed into gases and residues across an industrial furnace. Even if history remained, collecting it would be insane. Then I realized we did not necessarily need every original atom. Could VOS 3 itself operate partially? We connected no power. There was no port. But when I wore V7 near the fragment, both devices pulsed. A line appeared on V7. Anchor fragment recognized. Then a map, not a geographic map, a material relationship map. Dozens of faint points, most nearby, some far. V7 could sense the missing VOS 3 pieces directly now that part of the original device existed. That saved us months. One point was 30 kilometers away. We followed it. A luxury apartment building. The signal led to a penthouse bathroom. I wish I were joking. A gold-plated faucet contained trace recovered gold from VOS 3. The penthouse owner was an actor named Jae Sung who recognized me immediately. He refused to sell the faucet, not because it was valuable, because it matched the bathtub. I offered $5,000. No. 10,000. No. 20. He thought about it, then asked for a full restoration of his vintage motorcycle instead. Deal. We removed the faucet, replaced it with an identical new one, restored his motorcycle, and brought the original fixture back. I isolated a microscopic amount of gold. It peeled out of the faucet like glitter moving against gravity. The faucet surface developed tiny pits. Minho looked at it. $20,000 for this? Plus motorcycle. He sighed. Dinner is still on you. The next point led to a circuit board inside a commercial refrigerator, then a decorative lighting controller, then an old medical scanner scheduled for disposal, then, somehow, a karaoke machine. We spent 4 days hunting pieces of a shredded time reversal device through ordinary products. Every stop felt more ridiculous. At the karaoke bar, the owner would only let us take the machine after Minho sang one song. He chose a dramatic ballad. I learned 2 things. First, the karaoke machine contained a tiny ceramic component from VOS 3. Second, Minho should never sing where glassware is present. Finally, we recovered enough material, not all, about 86% according to V7. I arranged everything around the partial module, touched it, pulled, the fragments joined, copper threads returned, gold contacts formed. Ceramic pieces became tiny internal structures. A crystal component assembled itself. The module became almost complete. One corner remained physically missing, but VOS 3 activated. A circle appeared on its surface, then a soft pulse spread through the room. Every object within 5 meters suddenly felt clearer to me, not just history, stable states. The desk had a strong state from when it was manufactured, another from after we installed it, another from yesterday. The wrench had a factory state, a recently used state. The ceramic mug had a state before Minho chipped it. VOS 3 was doing exactly what Lena described. It detected anchor points, stable physical configurations. It could not freely browse like me, but it could identify snapshots. Then V7 displayed new text. Anchor link available. I touched the chipped mug. VOS 3 selected the pre-chip state automatically. I pulled. The mug repaired instantly. No searching, no mental scrolling, no effort. That was dangerous. Not because it hurt, because it was convenient. Convenience is how humans create terrible habits. Within 1 hour, I had anchored my phone, laptop, watch, shoes, favorite jacket, car, coffee machine, and Minhyo's vending machine. If anything broke, I could instantly return it to the saved state. Minhyo anchored his sunglasses. Then he stepped on them intentionally. Crunch. I touched them. Perfect. He stepped on them again. I fixed them. Again. I told him he was abusing advanced science. He said I had bought a Pagani graveyard. Fair. Then Theo heard about instant reset mode. I still do not know how Theo learned things. He had no clearance, no scientific role, no reason to be informed. Yet mysterious technology entered my warehouse and somehow his name appeared in my call log within 2 days. He wanted to use anchors at his next remote supercar event. I said no. Then he offered to pay for the entire VOS 3 recovery operation. I said maybe. We compromised on a controlled demonstration. 3 cars, no public explanation. We anchored each one in perfect track-ready condition. Then remote drivers raced through an obstacle course designed by people who had clearly been bullied by traffic cones as children. First car clipped a barrier. Reset. Second lost a bumper. Reset. Third destroyed a wheel. Reset. VOS 3 made the process instant. No searching through history. The cars snapped back to their anchors almost the moment I touched them. Then Theo asked if I needed to touch them at all. With V7 linked to VOS 3, my remote range was now stronger. I stood 10 meters away. Focused. Reset car 1. It repaired. The crowd of invited engineers went silent. 20 meters. Reset car 2. Worked. 30. Barely. V7 calibration. 0.31%. Still less than 1%. I stopped thinking about what 100% might mean. That was healthy. The demonstration ended without disaster until Theo decided to anchor a watermelon. Non-living? A freshly cut watermelon was biological tissue, technically dead plant material, but my power had always been inconsistent with food. The whole watermelon did not respond. A ceramic plate under it did. Theo smashed both with a mallet. I reset the plate. Ceramic pieces jumped together. Watermelon remained exploded across the table. Minhyo nodded. Science. We had finally found an experiment worth publishing. Then Titan Renewal made its move. Not against me, against the market. They launched restoration centers in 12 countries. Their VOS-based machines could not match my flexibility, but they did not need to. They could restore common high-value items quickly using stable reference states. Cars, industrial equipment, luxury goods, electronics. Insurance companies partnered with them. Manufacturers became nervous. Why buy a new gearbox if Titan could return an old one to low-wear condition? Why replace a turbine blade if it could be reset? Why scrap a damaged luxury car? For the first time, the world around me began changing because of the same idea I had used to get rich. I should have been worried about competition. Instead, I saw opportunity. If damaged things were becoming more valuable, then the cheapest wrecks would not stay cheap forever. So I went shopping, aggressively. I bought warehouses of salvage before the market adjusted. Cars, aircraft parts, marine equipment, construction machinery, high-end appliances, vintage electronics, damaged art with clean ownership, luxury watches that had been crushed, flooded, burned, dropped, stepped on, run over, or in one memorable case, swallowed by a zoo animal and later recovered. I did not ask which animal. Some knowledge reduces resale value emotionally. We created regional buying teams. Minhyo became head of acquisitions. He developed 3 rules. 1. If an item used to be extremely expensive and now looks hopeless, call Jin. 2. If the seller says it can never be restored, call Jin twice. 3. If the object contains concrete, trees, wild animals, active fire, or unexplained seafood, remove those first. Our biggest purchase came from a bankrupt private car museum. The museum had stored much of its collection underground. Then a flood hit. 83 vehicles sat submerged for days. Insurance settled. The owners collapsed financially. The liquidation value was terrible because water had entered everything. Some cars were modern exotics, some classics, some prototypes. One was a limousine with a built-in aquarium that made the flood situation deeply confusing. We bought the entire damaged collection at an average price so low that several supercars effectively cost us around $500 each after scrap credits and bundled assets. That number became famous later. People assumed it was marketing. It was not. One totaled Lamborghini really did cost me $512. A Ferrari cost $480. A prototype electric coupe cost less than a high-end office chair. The aquarium limousine cost $1 because the liquidator wanted it gone. I respected that. We transported everything to an abandoned shopping mall I had purchased as a restoration facility. That sentence would have sounded impossible 1 year earlier. Now I owned a mall because normal warehouses were too small for my garbage. The flood restoration became an event, not public, but every employee wanted to watch. I started with the $500 Lamborghini. I touched the roof. Floodwater surged out, seats dried, electronics repaired. Leather brightened, engine returned, paint deepened. In 8 seconds a car worth hundreds of thousands sat where a drowned wreck had been. I wrote $512 on the windshield with a washable marker. Minhyo took a photo. The Ferrari cost less, restored. Marker $480. Porsche $690. Bentley $530. By the 10th car the employees were cheering every time a wreck turned perfect. By the 20th somebody created a scoreboard comparing purchase price to estimated value. By the 30th Theo arrived uninvited with pizza. By the 40th Lena arrived because V7 had detected something strange in the collection. Of course it had. The signal came from the prototype electric coupe, the cheapest ugly thing in the room besides the aquarium limousine. I touched the coupe. History, flood, museum, private test facility, prototype workshop, then a moment where a VOS device had been installed under the floor. Not VOS 3, different, VOS 5. Lena recognized the designation. She had never seen it. Records described it as an inertial memory experiment. That meant nothing to me. She explained Anton had wondered whether an object's historical physical state included momentum and motion. I looked at her. She looked at me. Minhyo stopped eating pizza. If VOS 5 could restore not just shape but motion, that was horrifying. Imagine restoring a stationary ball to the physical state it had while flying 100 kilometers per hour. The ball would immediately resume that velocity. We had already seen small hints of stored tension and powered states. A piano chord, an animatronic dinosaur activating, but momentum? No, I wanted no part of it. Then V7 pointed to the aquarium limousine. I stared. No, arrow remained. I walked over. The limousine had once contained VOS 5. Why? Nobody knew. Maybe Anton hid devices in random vehicles deliberately. Maybe his employees did. Maybe rich scientists simply had poor inventory management. I touched the limousine floor. History, flood, aquarium installation. Earlier normal interior, earlier owner. Then, years back, a hidden module under the rear seat, removed later. VOS 5 had been there. V7 calibration increased again. 0.52%, 0.5%. My remote awareness spread across the entire mall atrium. I felt cars, escalators, glass railings, old store signs, benches, tiles, the abandoned fountain. Then I felt something moving. A loose wrench fell from a workbench 30 meters away. For a split second I sensed not only its shape, its physical motion. I reached instinctively. The wrench stopped falling. Not frozen. It jerked upward, then dropped again. Everyone turned. The wrench hit the floor. I stood motionless. Theo slowly put down his pizza. What did you just do? I had no good answer, because I had not restored the wrench's position. I had restored one tiny part of its recent physical state. Its upward velocity from when Minhyo had tossed it onto the table earlier. The object remembered motion, and now, apparently, so could I. Minhyo looked at the ceiling, then at me, then quietly moved every heavy tool onto the floor. Growth. I banned motion experiments for 24 hours. Then a piano fell out of a window. Not because of me. I need that stated for legal and spiritual reasons. We were restoring a historic hotel when a moving crew lost control of an upright piano on the 3rd floor. The piano hit the temporary loading platform, bounced, and tipped over the edge. Below it stood Minhyo. Of course, some people attract luck. Minhyo attracted large objects. I was 15 meters away. V7 flashed. The falling piano's motion appeared in my awareness like an arrow, downward. Fast. I did not have time to think. I reached for an earlier physical state when the piano had been moving upward on the freight lift. Then I pulled only the motion. The piano jerked. It did not fly back to the 3rd floor. Its downward speed simply became upward speed. For one beautiful second, a 400-kilogram piano rose into the air. Minhyo stared up. I stared up. Everyone stared up. Then gravity remembered its job. The piano started falling again. Minhyo ran. I changed its motion again. Up, down, up, down. The piano bounced in midair like the world's least appropriate yo-yo. Finally, the crew rolled a heavy platform beneath it. I canceled its downward speed to nearly 0. The piano dropped the last half meter. Thunk. Silence. Minyo looked at me, then at the piano, then at me. You could have moved me. I cannot rewind living things. You could have shouted. I was busy violating physics. Fair. We restored the piano afterward. It played perfectly. The hotel manager asked whether the airborne part cost extra. I said yes. Motion restoration became the first part of my power I refused to monetize immediately. I had standards. Also, insurance brokers were beginning to develop nervous tics around me. We tested it privately with tennis balls, rolling carts, and one remote toy car. The rule seemed simple. If an object had previously possessed a certain velocity, I could restore that component of its physical state for a brief instant. Direction mattered, speed mattered, rotation mattered. The object did not teleport to the old location. It simply regained an earlier motion. That meant I could make a stopped wheel spin like it had 5 minutes ago. I could make a rolling ball stop by returning it to a stationary state. I could reverse a thrown object if it had previously moved the opposite direction. Useful, ridiculous, dangerous. V7 still showed only 0.52%. I put VOS5 research aside. Then the International Salvage Expo invited us to Dubai. This event was basically a luxury flea market for disasters. Insurance firms, collectors, restorers, recyclers, auction houses, shipping companies, and people with suspiciously clean shoes gathered to buy damaged high-value assets. Cars filled one hall. Art filled another. Marine salvage sat outdoors. Aircraft components took up half a runway. There was even a section for unusual recoveries, which contained a damaged movie robot, a cracked observatory mirror, 3 casino statues, and an enormous brass bell recovered from a sunken hotel-themed attraction. I loved it immediately. Minyo took my bidding paddle away. I stole another. Our first purchase was a fire-damaged Koenigsegg, $700, not because nobody knew what it was, because most valuable components had supposedly been destroyed or removed. The remaining shell had paperwork and provenance but almost no conventional repair value. I touched it later in a private bay. The shell remembered being complete, but most removed components were not present. Could it call them from wherever they were? Maybe. I was not about to test whether an engine would launch itself across international borders. So I used the shell history to identify every original part number and configuration, then bought back what we could from the salvage chain. Some pieces were in the same auction. Convenient. Others had been sold. We sourced replacements. Here my power showed another useful trick. A replacement part did not need to be original to become perfect. It could not transform into the missing original object. But if it was the correct compatible part, I could restore the car around it to a state after replacement installation once that state existed. So we rebuilt enough conventionally to make the vehicle physically complete. Then I created a new stable assembled state, drove it 5 meters, stopped and anchored it. Now the repaired Koenigsegg had a clean new history from that moment forward. Not original, but perfect. We disclosed everything and still sold it for a fortune. That was important. I was not in the business of using magic to commit fraud. I was in the business of using magic to make absurd profit legally. Much more relaxing. The expo's main attraction was called the Impossible Row. 20 items considered beyond economic repair. Whoever bought them accepted all risk. A crushed supercar, a burned raceboat, a shattered glass sculpture, a grand piano dropped from a crane. Why were pianos always falling? A vintage camera melted in a studio fire. A damaged mechanical clock. A luxury motorhome split open by a fallen sign. A prototype motorcycle. A cracked marble bathtub from a royal hotel. An antique safe recovered from a flooded basement. A huge neon casino sign. A movie spaceship prop destroyed during production. A diamond necklace that had gone through an industrial laundry machine. A famous chef's copper cooking range. A private submarine window assembly. A sports trophy flattened by a truck. A designer sofa attacked by 6 dogs. A robot bartender. A bronze horse. And a silver sports car that looked like it had been chewed by Godzilla. We bought all 20. Titan bought 20 different items. Dr. Brandt was there, of course. He greeted me like we were co-workers who occasionally tried to reverse engineer each other's supernatural technology. The expo organizers offered private restoration bays and suggested a friendly demonstration. No competition, no score, no cameras unless both sides agreed. Theo appeared from nowhere holding 2 cameras. We removed Theo. Then he returned wearing an exhibitor badge. I still do not know where he got it. I started with the diamond necklace. It had been wrapped in hotel laundry, entered an industrial machine, lost 3 stones, bent several links, and survived a dryer. The 3 stones were supposedly recovered separately. I placed them nearby. Touched the necklace. Links straightened. Clasp repaired. Stones rose and seated themselves. Perfect. Next, the dog sofa. I restored it to 5 minutes before the dogs entered the room. Fabric healed. Stuffing returned. Wood repaired. Then 6 dog toys hidden inside the torn cushions shot backward out of a box nearby and landed on the sofa. Theo applauded. The chef's copper range became factory fresh. The chef got angry because decades of seasoning and custom ware vanished. I restored it again, this time to 3 months before the accident. Old patina returned. Favorite scratches returned. A tiny dent he said had character returned. He hugged the stove. Then he hugged me. Minyo raised our quote. The antique safe was tricky. The safe itself had been underwater. Whatever was inside had been removed after recovery. I could restore the metal, lock, paint, and internal shelves. I could not restore missing contents. Good. I did not want surprise diamonds launching through a wall. The movie spaceship prop was easy until I rewound its lighting system and accidentally restored a smoke effect cartridge to the moment before activation. It fired. White smoke filled the bay. The robot bartender rolled through the cloud and began serving empty glasses because its control software had also reverted to a demonstration loop. The bronze horse repaired. The neon casino sign repaired and immediately lit up. The cracked bathtub restored itself with such elegance that Theo climbed inside fully dressed and posed. Then came the silver sports car. No badge, no obvious model. The body looked futuristic but old. Lena, who had joined remotely, asked me not to touch it until she checked the chassis number. I touched it. This was becoming a pattern. History opened. Crash. Track testing. Workshop. Prototype facility. Older workshop. Then Voss. Not a device hidden inside. The car itself had been part of Anton Voss's research. V7 vibrated hard. The silver car had been used as a test platform for multiple systems. Voss 2, Voss 5, Voss 8. 3 designations. I lifted my hand. Too late. Calibration jumped. 0.88%. My awareness expanded across the entire expo hall. Thousands of objects. Cars, tools, phones, tables, watches, jewelry, building structure, aircraft parts beyond the wall. For half a second I could sense the history of everything. It hit me like noise. I grabbed the car roof for balance. Bad move. The silver prototype connected more strongly. V7 displayed a new line. Operator threshold approaching. I released it. The world went quiet. Minyo caught my shoulder. I was fine, mostly. Then Dr. Brand appeared at the edge of our bay. He stared at the silver car. Not at me, at the car. For the first time since I met him, he looked genuinely surprised. He asked where we got it. I pointed toward the auction hall. He immediately walked away. That was suspicious. I sent Minyo after him. Minyo returned 5 minutes later. Brant was trying to buy our purchase contract from the auction company. I smiled. Now we had something Titan wanted. That made the ugly silver car my favorite object at the expo. I restored it carefully, not to factory condition. To a Voss test configuration. The damaged body unfolded, silver panels smoothed, windows returned, tires thickened, interior electronics repaired. Then something appeared on the center console, a physical label that had later been removed. V8 harmonic bridge test. Lena went silent when I sent the photo. Voss 8 was almost mythical. Anton's notes described it as a shared state bridge. I asked what that meant. She said the theory involved linking the physical histories of 2 separate objects. That sounded useless. Then she gave an example. If 2 identical damaged parts were linked, maybe one could use the other's intact state as a reference, even if that intact state had never existed in the damaged part's own history. I stopped breathing. That would break one of my biggest limitations. Until now, I could only return an object to a state it had actually possessed. Voss 8 might allow an object to borrow a state from another object, not create matter, not magically change type, but perhaps use a matching object as a template. Titan's technology suddenly made more sense. They may not be extracting hidden states from every burned object. They might be bridging it to a pristine reference sample. I looked at Brant's booth across the hall. He looked back. Then the silver car's dashboard turned on. A map appeared, not road navigation. A list. 9 project numbers, Voss 1 through Voss 9. Some marked inactive, some missing. Voss 3, partial. Voss 5, remote trace. Voss 7, active operator. VOS 8, test chassis. Then VOS 9 flashed. Status, sealed. Location field, unavailable. A second line appeared. Access requires 1.0% operator calibration. I was at 0.88. Minyo read over my shoulder. So we need another 12/100ths? Yes. What happens at 1%? No idea. He nodded. Great. Very comforting. Then Theo returned carrying a broken espresso machine. He had bought it for $20. Can you fix this? I stared at him, then at the mysterious VOS prototype, then at Dr. Brandt, then at the entire expo full of impossible salvage. I fixed the espresso machine. Some problems deserved immediate attention. The espresso machine was the final clue. Not because it contained secret technology. It was just very broken. Theo had bought it from a hotel liquidation booth. The boiler was cracked, one control board was missing, the steam wand had been replaced with the wrong part, and somebody had attempted a repair using what appeared to be plumbing tape and optimism. Normally I would restore each surviving component, source the missing board, replace the wrong wand, then create a new complete state. Instead, the silver VOS test car gave me another idea. VOS 8 was built around shared physical references. So I borrowed an identical working espresso machine from the Expo Cafe. Same model, same year, same configuration. I placed them side by side, one perfect, one disaster. I wore V7, touched the silver car with my left hand, touched the broken machine with my right. Then I focused on the good machine. At first, nothing happened. The broken machine's own history remained dominant, damaged, used, new. There was already a factory state inside its past, so VOS 8 had no reason to bridge. I needed something it had never possessed. I removed the steam knob from the broken machine. Not damaged, completely separate. Now the machine had no current steam knob, but historically it had once possessed one as part of the assembled object. Still too easy. I needed an object whose desired form had never existed in its own history. Theo offered his sunglasses. Minyo offered Theo's phone. I refused both. We went to a hardware booth and bought two identical aluminum plates. I bent one into a clean 90-degree bracket using a press. The other remained flat. The flat plate had never been a bracket. Same material. Same mass. Same manufacturing batch. I placed them beside VOS 8, touched the flat plate. Its history showed flat, only flat. Then I focused on the bent reference. For a second I felt two timelines brush against each other. V7 displayed a symbol of overlapping circles. I pulled. The flat plate bent. No press, no impact, no heat. It simply adopted the reference geometry. Everyone in the private bay froze. Theo whispered a word I cannot repeat in front of sponsors. I let go. The new bracket remained bent. Its physical history now included the transformation. I had just created a state that never existed in its own past, not from imagination, from another object that was different, that was huge. Lena joined the call immediately. She looked more alarmed than excited. Shared state bridging could reshape one compatible object toward another's configuration. Material still mattered. Mass still mattered. Similarity mattered. I could not turn a spoon into a Ferrari. Good, I had enough paperwork. But I might turn a blank replacement panel into the exact geometry of an original reference panel, or a newly machined gear into a perfect copy of an unavailable historic gear, or a fresh piece of matching glass into the exact shape of a lost custom lens. It did not copy serial numbers or information magically unless those features were physical geometry and the material could support them. We immediately set ethical rules. No signatures, no currency, no identity marks, no counterfeit goods, no using a reference to fake provenance. We were going to repair impossible things, not become the world's most annoying forgery ring. Minyo printed the rules and taped them above the vending machine. Theo added one. No copying Theo. He was living. It would not work anyway. He seemed relieved and offended at the same time. The first legitimate test came from the expo itself. A 1930s concept car had a unique headlight lens missing for decades. No original replacement existed. The opposite side lens survived, but it was mirrored. A normal manufacturer could scan it, reverse the geometry, produce a mold, test materials, and create a reproduction. We could do something stranger. A glass specialist made us a blank lens from matching composition and mass. VOS 8 linked the surviving lens as a structural reference. I mentally mirrored the geometry. That part was difficult. The device resisted because the target was not identical orientation. Then I realized I could physically rotate the reference lens in my perception. Same curves, opposite direction. I pulled. The blank glass flowed without melting. Ridges formed, edges curved, mounting details appeared. Not historical details, only geometry. The new lens became a perfect mirrored structural match. Experts examined it. We permanently marked it as a modern reproduction, then installed it. The car looked whole for the first time in 70 years. The owner cried. Then he asked if we could make 6 spares. We made 2. I was not turning rare car restoration into a photocopier. The successful bridge raised V7 calibration, 0.94%, close. Dr. Brandt requested a meeting. We met in a cafe inside the expo, public place, no secret laboratory, no dramatic rooftop, just 2 men drinking coffee while pretending neither possessed technology capable of making replacement parts remember shapes they had never been. Brandt offered $50 million for the silver Voss test car. I declined. $100 million, declined. Access to Titan's restoration network plus $100 million. Tempting, still no. Then he offered a trade, 1 Voss device, for the car. My attention changed. He showed me a photo. Small rectangular module, gray metal, marking V2. Lena had said Voss 2 involved structural harmonics, whatever that meant. Brandt claimed Titan had recovered it 15 years ago. It was damaged, intactive. He would trade it for the test chassis. That told me the chassis was worth more to him than V2, which meant I definitely wanted to keep the chassis. I thanked him for the information and left. Minhyo nearly choked when I told him. You turned down $100 million? Yes. For a silver car we bought in a junk auction? Yes. He stared at me for a long time, then nodded. Good. That surprised me. Really? No. I wanted to see if saying it helped. It did not. We shipped the car home under ridiculous security. I did not trust Titan. I also did not think Brandt would steal it in a dramatic robbery. He was a CEO. CEOs stole things using contracts, much harder to punch. Back home, our normal business had become abnormal again. A famous magician wanted a crushed stage prop restored. A luxury ski resort wanted a broken cable car cabin repaired for display. A film studio wanted a destroyed miniature city returned to its pre-explosion setup so they could blow it up again. That one became my favorite job. The miniature was huge. Buildings, tiny roads, model cars, streetlights, bridges. The studio had filmed an action scene by physically detonating sections. Normally rebuilding would take weeks. I touched the base. The miniature remembered. Tiny walls rose. Windows jumped into frames. Model cars rolled backward into traffic positions. Foam debris became buildings. A tiny helicopter returned to a rooftop. A miniature billboard reassembled. In 30 seconds, the entire fake city looked untouched. The director screamed with happiness. Then they blew it up again. I restored it. They blew it up again. I restored it. After the 6th explosion, I started charging per reset. The film's budget increased. So did mine. Then came the luxury train. An old private rail set called the Golden Meridian had spent decades transporting celebrities, politicians, musicians, and extremely rich people who did not enjoy airports. 5 restored passenger cars remained. A storm damaged 3 badly. 1 rolled into a maintenance structure. Another had interior water damage. The dining car caught a small electrical fire. The owners wanted a 6-month repair. I offered 2 days. Railcars were fascinating because they existed as separate objects connected into a larger train. I could restore each individually. The dining car returned to a state from before the fire. Wood paneling repaired. Brass polished. Tables straightened. Then the place settings started moving. Original silverware had been removed and stored in the next car. Forks flew through the connecting door, not dangerously, just with purpose. 30 forks shot into the dining car and landed beside plates in perfect positions. Then spoons, then knives, then 1 silver serving tray slid under Minhyo's arm like it had somewhere important to be. He stepped aside, the tray landed on a cabinet. A bottle of vintage wine from a display shelf began rolling. I stopped the restoration. No. We were not letting a 40-year-old bottle reenact railway service. We removed all loose historical accessories before continuing. The sleeper car was easier. The observation car had a cracked panoramic window. I restored it. The crack vanished. Then the curtains returned to an earlier closed position and smacked Theo in the face. He had somehow joined this job too. The Golden Meridian ran again. The owners hosted a private trip. They invited us. For once, I sat inside something expensive without planning to buy it damaged later. The train moved through mountains. Minhyo ate a ridiculous 7-course dinner. Theo filmed everything. Lena joined us in the observation car. She had spent the week decoding information from the silver Voss chassis. The dashboard list of project numbers was only the beginning. When we restored the test car to different historical states, different data appeared. Anton had used physical labels, removable memory modules, test cards, and etched plates throughout the vehicle. Most had later been removed, but the car could restore itself to moments when they were present. This turned it into a kind of accidental archive. We did not need the missing documents. The car's own past contained them when they had been physically attached. So every night I rewound one section to a test state, photographed the restored labels, then returned the car to current condition. One label referenced V9. Another referenced a location code. Another contained a date. The date was 15 years ago. The location code matched a mountain storage facility once owned by Anton Voss. Lena had already checked. The facility still existed. Now it was a luxury wine vault. Of course it was. Rich people could turn anything into wine storage. We planned to visit after the train trip. Then the Golden Meridian entered a tunnel. V7 vibrated. I looked at my wrist. Calibration 0.94. Arrow appeared, pointing down. Not toward the train floor. Below us. Inside the mountain. The train continued. The arrow shifted backward. Whatever V7 sensed was beneath the railway tunnel. I told Lena. Her face changed. This route passed less than 2 kilometers from Anton's old mountain facility. There might be another underground section not shown on current plans. The train emerged from the tunnel. Signal faded. Calibration remained unchanged. We could have stopped. We did not. The next morning we drove to the wine vault. The facility looked like a resort bunker. Stone entrance, climate control, private tasting rooms. Thousands of bottles stored inside old reinforced chambers. The manager knew Lena's family name and became extremely cooperative when she offered to rent the entire place for a private inspection. We walked deeper. V7 arrow returned. One corridor, then another. Storage room. Wine racks. Wall. The arrow pointed through concrete. Old plans showed nothing beyond it. I touched the wall. History opened. Current wine vault. Renovation. Older storage facility. Construction. Then something interesting. The wall had once contained a door. Later sealed. I rewound only the surface finish. Plaster changed. Paint peeled backward. The outline of a steel doorway appeared. The manager stared. Mignot put on safety goggles. We removed the wine bottles. Then I restored the sealed door to the day before it had been covered. Concrete plugs separated. A steel frame returned. A heavy door emerged from the wall. On it, a faded label appeared. Calibration archive. V7 flashed. 0.97%. 3/100ths away. I opened the door. Behind it was a narrow chamber. Empty shelves. Dust. Old mounting brackets. No magical machine. No glowing laboratory. Just storage. I walked inside. V7 arrow pointed toward the floor. A metal plate was embedded beneath dust. I cleaned it. Voss 1. Lena almost laughed. The first project, not a device. A calibration plate. Anton had used it to test whether material history systems could recognize controlled damage. The plate had been scratched, dented, heated, cooled, bent, repaired, and altered hundreds of times. It was basically a laboratory object with an absurdly rich physical history. For my power, it was a training gym. I touched it. The states exploded through my awareness. Straight, bent, scratched, polished, frozen, heated, drilled, welded, cut, rejoined, painted, unpainted. Hundreds of controlled configurations. V7 responded. 0.98. I moved through more states. 0.99. Then the plate reached a configuration with 3 holes and 1 precise bend. V7 pulsed. 1.00%. Everything stopped. Not time. My perception. The historical noise disappeared. The wristband became warm. A new message appeared. Basic operator calibration complete. Basic. After restoring millions of dollars in cars, rebuilding yachts, reassembling recycled technology, catching a falling piano, and turning an abandoned shopping mall into a supercar resurrection factory, I had completed the basic calibration. Mignot read the message. He sat down on an empty shelf. I hate this family. Lena nodded. Reasonable. Then V7 displayed a second message. V9 seal location available. A coordinate appeared. I checked the map. It was not inside the mountain. Not in Titan's headquarters, not under a billionaire mansion. It was in the middle of a city, at an auction house. An auction scheduled for the next evening. Lot number 209. The listing title was simple. Unidentified industrial sculpture, damaged. Estimated value? $500. I stared at the screen, then I started laughing. Of course it was $500. The next evening I went to buy a $500 sculpture and accidentally started a bidding war with 3 billionaires, a museum, Titan Renewal Group, and a man who thought it would look nice beside his swimming pool. The sculpture was ugly. That helped. It stood almost 3 meters tall and looked like someone had welded a refrigerator to a satellite dish, dropped both down a staircase, then covered the result in gray paint. The auction catalog admitted nobody knew the artist, nobody knew the date, nobody knew whether it was actually art. It had been found in a warehouse purchased from a failed engineering company. The auction house called it Industrial Mixed Media Sculpture. Minyo called it Metal Regret. V7 called it V9. I trusted V7. We registered under a separate company name to avoid attracting attention. That plan failed because Theo posted a photo of us entering the auction. By the time lot 209 approached, half the room knew I wanted something. Dr. Brandt sat in the second row. Of course. Lena sat beside me. Minyo held our paddle. I held Minyo's wrist. That was the only safe arrangement. Lot 206 sold. Lot 207. Lot 208. Then attendants rolled out the sculpture. The auctioneer introduced it with the confidence of a man professionally trained to make unknown metal sound culturally important. Opening bid $500. I nearly smiled. A man near the back raised his paddle. 600. Pool guy. Minyo bid 7. Pool guy bid 8. Minyo bid 9. I was already annoyed. Then Brandt raised his paddle. 5,000. The room changed. People looked at him, then at us. The auctioneer became much more interested in the sculpture. Minyo bid 6,000. Brandt 10. Minyo 12. Museum representative 15. Why was the museum involved? Because rich people bidding confidently can create value out of oxygen. Pool guy returned at 16. I respected his commitment. The price climbed. 20,000, 30, 50, 100. At $100,000, the auctioneer stopped describing it as unidentified. Now it was enigmatic. At 200,000, it became important. At $500,000, people started photographing it like the sculpture had personally invented steel. I leaned toward Minhyo. Stop. He lowered the paddle. Brandt bid 600,000. Museum dropped out. Pool guy finally surrendered. Another phone bidder entered. 700. Brandt 8. Phone 9. Interesting. Somebody else knew. Lena checked her messages. No idea who. The phone bidder jumped to 1.5 million. Brandt bid 2. I did nothing. Minyo looked at me. You came here for this. Yes. You are letting them buy it. Yes. Growth. Strategy. That sounded better. The phone bidder went 2.5. Brandt went 3. At $3 million, I stood up and walked toward the restroom. Every camera in the room followed me. Brandt glanced back. The phone bidder paused. Perfect. They thought I had lost interest. I had not. I went through a side hallway, found the auction operations desk, and asked a simple question. Was lot 209 being sold individually only, or was the buyer also required to pay removal and storage fees? Individually. Could unsold warehouse equipment from the same source be purchased afterward? Yes. There were 6 more crates, all considered low-value industrial debris. I asked to make an immediate post-auction offer on those unsold crates. The manager said I could. So while Brandt and the phone bidder fought over the sculpture, I bought every piece of associated warehouse debris for $12,000. Why? Because V7's arrow did not point at the sculpture. It pointed at the wooden shipping base under it. I had noticed during preview. Lot 209 included the sculpture, not necessarily the base. The base belonged to the auction house handling equipment and had come from the same warehouse batch. During the bidding, V7's signal shifted depending on my angle. The sculpture itself was historical bait. The real signal came from below. When the hammer finally fell, Brandt won at $4.2 million. The audience applauded. He turned toward my empty seat. I was in the loading area buying a damaged pallet. Minyo joined me 10 minutes later. He looked emotionally injured. You let him win. I did. He paid $4 million for Metal Regret. Yes. Where is V9? I pointed at a dirty steel transport frame stacked beside our newly purchased crates. Minyo stared, then laughed so loudly a forklift driver stopped. The frame looked worthless. Rectangular steel, rust, bent corner, old mounting holes. V7 vibrated, strong signal. I touched it. History. Auction warehouse, previous warehouse, transport. Engineering facility. Then a sealed black module bolted underneath. Removed. No, still there. Hidden inside a welded section. The device had been enclosed within the frame itself. The ugly sculpture had merely been transported on top of it years later. The V9 seal location was the base structure. Brant had bought the wrong object. I was about to enjoy this victory when he entered the loading area. He saw us, saw the frame, saw my hand on it, stopped. His face became very still. I gave a small wave. He walked over. Then, to my surprise, he laughed. Not fake polite CEO laughter, real laughter. He looked back toward the $4 million sculpture being prepared for shipment, then at me. I deserve that. I liked him slightly more. Dangerous. He asked whether V9 was inside. I did not answer. He already knew. Then the mysterious phone bidder arrived. Lena recognized her first. A woman in her 70s wearing a bright green suit and carrying a cane shaped like a flamingo. Her name was Beatrice Voss, Lena's aunt. Apparently the Voss family had more secret technology hunters than normal families had cousins. Beatrice had spent 20 years collecting Anton's research materials. She had been the phone bidder. She had also known the sculpture was probably a decoy. So why bid? To force Titan to spend money. I respected her immediately. Beatrice looked at me, then at the frame, then at Brant, then at the sculpture. She smiled. Anton would have found this hilarious. Good. At least the inventor had taste. We transported the steel frame to our secure facility. Brant requested observer status. I said no. Beatrice requested observer status. Lena said no before I could. Family politics. Minho requested observer status. He was already standing in the room eating chips. We cut nothing. I wanted to preserve history. Instead, I touched the frame and moved it backward to before the welded enclosure had been sealed. The welds softened into earlier beads. Steel plates separated along their assembly sequence. A hidden cavity opened. Inside sat a black module the size of a hardback book. No wires, no buttons, no display. Marking, V9. V7 lit up. Seal confirmed. Then a warning. Do not restore V9 beyond deployment state without external containment. Minho stopped chewing. I read it again. External containment. That sounded like a phrase designed by scientists who had previously destroyed something expensive. We did not touch V9. This was more growth. Instead, we restored the steel frame around it to the last safe access state, leaving the module exposed but unchanged. Lena searched Anton's recovered notes. Beatrice sent old documents. Brant offered Titan data if we shared results. For 3 days, nobody could agree what V9 did. The project name appeared only once. Continuity Chamber. That sounded serious. I did not like serious. Then Beatrice found an old audio transcript. Anton described V9 as a solution to a simple problem. What happens when an object's physical history becomes ambiguous? 2 restorations, 2 valid states, 2 systems claiming the same material, recycled components, shared references, merged objects, separated objects. At some point, what is the object stops being obvious. V9 supposedly managed continuity. It helped decide which history belonged to which physical system. That sounded boring. Then Lena explained what it might mean. Remember the elevator metal? Atoms from Voss 3 had become parts of new objects. When I pulled them backward, I chose the older identity. V9 might let me manage both identities without relying only on instinct. It might define a boundary across a huge complex object. A car, a building, a ship, maybe an entire factory. I could tell the system, this exact collection of non-living material counts as one object for the next restoration. My mouth went dry. That would solve one of my biggest limitations. Large complex systems overwhelmed me because they contained thousands or millions of separate histories. V9 might organize them. Minho asked the obvious question. Could you restore the abandoned mall? I owned a dead shopping mall as our facility. Half the building was empty. Escalators broken. Old cinema closed. Food court stripped. Water damage in one wing. I had restored small sections before, but doing the entire mall as one object was exhausting and dangerously complicated. With V9, maybe. So we tested small, not on the mall, on a junk drawer. Science begins humbly. The drawer contained 30 unrelated objects, screws, batteries, pens, tape, coins, a key, a broken flashlight, 3 mystery cables. Minho added a soy sauce packet. I removed it. Food research had suffered enough. We placed V9 nearby without changing its state. V7 linked automatically. A new interface appeared in my perception. Not visual exactly. Boundary control. I defined the drawer and all current non-living contents as one system. Then I touched the drawer handle. Its history became organized. Instead of 30 timelines screaming at once, V9 grouped them. Current drawer system. Earlier drawer system. Before Minho added the flashlight. Before I added the tape. Before yesterday's battery. I could select a system state. I chose 10 minutes earlier. Everything reset. A pin rolled backward. A coin returned to a corner. The flashlight regained the crack it had before I fixed it. The tape moved. The key rotated. The drawer as a system rewound coherently. Minho looked disappointed. That's it. That is enormous. It is a drawer. He was technically right. We moved up. Tool cart. Worked. Workshop table. Worked. Entire restoration bay. Worked but exhausting. Then one small office. I defined the room as a system. Rewound it to that morning. Coffee stains vanished. Moved chairs returned. A whiteboard erased itself back to earlier notes. Papers shuffled into previous positions. Minho's missing screwdriver flew from behind a cabinet onto the desk. He pointed. I knew someone moved it. He had moved it. We continued. One store unit inside the abandoned mall. Then a hallway. Then the food court seating area. V9 did not increase my raw energy, but it massively reduced mental overload. Instead of controlling thousands of objects individually, I could restore a defined system to a coherent earlier state. That made large restoration practical. Not easy. Practical. I looked around the dead mall. I had bought it because it was cheap. Now I saw what it had been 15 years ago. Crowds. Arcade. Cinema. Food court. Department store. Fountain. Bright signs. Could I return it? Not the people. Not the food. Not businesses whose inventory was gone. But the physical building? Maybe. So I did something financially stupid. I closed Second Chance for one day. Employees gathered outside. Camera set up only for internal recording. Fire department notified. Engineers checked the structure. Loose foreign objects removed. We isolated utility systems. I stood in the central atrium wearing V7. V9 sat in a protected enclosure beside me. I placed my hand on the floor. Then I defined the mall. Not everything. Building structure. Installed fixtures. Escalators. Elevators. Windows. Railings. Permanently mounted signs were still physically present. Plumbing. Electrical distribution. HVAC. Cinema seats. Fixed counters. Fountain. I excluded modern equipment we had added. Excluded our cars. Excluded employees. Excluded every loose item. The boundary took 20 minutes to feel right. Then I searched the mall's history. Current abandoned condition. Our renovations. Years empty. Partial occupancy. Peak operation. I chose a point 12 years earlier when the structure was healthy but before some later bad renovations. Then I pulled. The building groaned. Everybody outside went silent. Dust lifted from floors. Cracked tiles sealed. Dead light fixtures returned. Escalator steps straightened. Old rust vanished. Glass cleared. A broken railing pulled into shape. Ceiling panels returned. Water stains faded. The central fountain repaired itself. Cinema doors changed. Old carpet patterns returned. Storefront frames became clean. An enormous decorative clock above the food court started moving. Then a problem. A later installed wall was not part of the old configuration. It began disassembling. We had expected that. What we did not expect was the giant LED screen mounted on it. The screen was modern equipment and excluded from the restoration boundary. The wall vanished behind it. The screen remained. For one absurd second, a 5-meter display stood upright with no wall. Then gravity took over. I restored its recent motion to stationary. The screen froze in place for half a second. Workers rushed supports underneath. I continued. The mall transformed around me. The dead building became bright, clean, whole. Old store signs returned where the signs themselves still existed beneath later coverings. A cinema marquee reappeared. The fountain jets activated because the pump system returned to a functioning powered state. Water sprayed 30 feet into the air. Everyone cheered. Then one escalator started moving backward because I had selected a historical moment when its motor rotation happened to be opposite. Minho stepped onto it. He traveled down while trying to walk up. Theo filmed him. Perfect. I corrected the motor. The restoration finished. I collapsed into a chair, not unconscious, just deeply interested in sitting. The mall around us looked almost new, not modern, alive in a physical sense. We had returned an abandoned commercial complex to a healthy structural state in less than 1 hour. The video stayed private for 8 minutes. Theo. I should have searched him for cameras. By evening, the internet had footage. By midnight, every property developer on Earth seemed to have my contact information. Abandoned hotels, dead malls, historic theaters, old factories, storm-damaged resorts, theme parks, office towers. One person asked if I could restore a failed indoor ski slope. Another asked about a castle. Someone sent a photo of an entire ghost town. I raised our prices. A lot. Then Titan called. Brant did not challenge me. He offered a partnership. Their machines could operate continuously without exhausting a human. My V7 and V9 combination had superior flexibility and system definition. Together we could restore large infrastructure. I declined for now. Not because the idea was bad, because I had learned something else during the mall restoration. At exactly 1.00% calibration, V7 unlocked basic V9 boundary control. But when I restored the mall, the number increased, 1.07%. Then 1.11. V7 was still calibrating. 1% had not been the finish. It had been the end of basic training. That night, I sat alone in the restored food court. The fountain ran. Old lights glowed. My $500 Lamborghini sat behind glass in what used to be a clothing store because Minyo had turned it into a display. The windshield still had $512 written on it. I looked at my hands. 1 year earlier, I had $48 and a dead microwave. Now I owned an absurd restoration empire, an abandoned mall that was no longer abandoned, a collection of supercars purchased for the price of office furniture, 3 pieces of impossible Voss technology, and a business partner who kept billing me for steak dinners. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, my phone buzzed. Message from Madame CO. She had a new restoration request, not a burned painting, a sculpture, ancient, recently damaged during transport, potential value enormous, normal job. Then another message arrived from Raphael. His yacht's helipad had been damaged by a helicopter. I stared. How? Another message from Theo. He had purchased a crashed race car for science. Another from a hotel owner. Flooded penthouse. Another from a museum. Collapsed display. Another from Minhyo. He was 30 meters away in the same building. Vending machine ate my coin. I laughed. This was my life. I stood, walked toward the vending machine. Then V7 activated. No touch, no warning. A symbol appeared across the band. Not the backward arrow, a forward arrow. I stopped walking. That had never happened. My power had always been about physical history, past states, existing history. Rewind, never forward. The symbol remained. Then V9 lit up inside its protected room on the other side of the mall. The lights flickered. Every restored object within my awareness suddenly felt different. Not like their paths were opening, like something was searching them. A query, a missing state. V7 displayed text. Continuity conflict detected. Then, external V9 class boundary active. I stared. Our V9 was here, protected, intactive except for the link to me. So the message meant another system, another V9 class device, somewhere else. The forward arrow pointed east. Then the mall's central clock stopped. Not broke, stopped. Its hands moved backward 1 minute, then forward 2, then backward again. I did not touch it. The fountain jets lowered, rose, lowered. A restored glass panel near the atrium flickered between scratched and clean. My ability was not causing it. Something else was reaching into the mall's physical history, from outside. Minhyo ran toward me. For once, he was not carrying coffee. V7 calibration climbed. 1.12, 1.13, 1.14, then froze. A final message appeared. Remote operator handshake requested. Operator, not machine. Another operator. Someone else could do what I did. Or something close enough that V7 recognized them. I should have been scared. Instead, the first thought that entered my mind was unbelievably stupid. Did they also buy wrecked Ferraris for $500? Then the forward arrow vanished. The mall returned to normal. Clock ticking. Fountain running. Glass stable. V9 went dark. Minhyo stared at me. I stared at him. Then his vending machine made a noise. A coin dropped into the return slot. He picked it up slowly. It was not his coin. Different year, different scratches, different serial pattern. An object that had never been inside our vending machine before. I touched it. History opened. Current. Vending machine. Before that, nothing I recognized. Then a sharp wall of resistance. Exactly like V7 when I first touched it. The coin had been used as a message. Stamped into its edge was a tiny symbol, a forward arrow. Under it, 3 words. Stop rewinding mine. I looked across the restored mall, at the SUPERCARS, at V9's sealed room, at the glowing old storefronts, at Minhyo holding the impossible coin. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. No voice, just the sound of an engine. A very expensive engine. Then a photo arrived. A car, destroyed, burned, almost unrecognizable. Beside it sat an auction listing. Opening bid $500. Under the photo was one sentence. First one to restore it keeps V6. I smiled before I could stop myself. Minhyo saw my face. No. I grabbed my jacket. No. I checked the address. 2 hours away. Jin. I started walking. He followed while complaining. Behind us, the $500 Lamborghini gleamed under the mall lights. Ahead of us, somewhere in the city, another impossible wreck was waiting. And apparently this time, the wreck was waiting for me on purpose.